Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku became a magical girl mascot? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Quirk, Magical Girl Mascot. By Iveli. Chapter 1. The Exam. Many years ago, a baby was born in China that lit up like the sun. Since then, about 80% of the population has since gained powers. To the extent that superheroes and supervillains had begun to rise, and becoming a hero was a popular profession. Many schools popped up to teach on how to become heroes, and in Japan, the best was Yue. And that day, as the entrance exam, many students had gathered, including a girl wearing a sailor fuku. She had blonde spiky hair. Around her neck was a simple necklace that had a bright orange gem. However, interestingly, was a strange animal on her shoulder. It was green, had bunny ears and a tail that resembled a dog's. But its body shape was most interesting. It was bipedal and it sort of resembled a stuffed toy. Also, there was a gem on its forehead that shifted between bright orange and a vibrant green. "I can't believe it," said the animal, which had a boy's voice while its tail was wagging. "We're really here." "We are," replied the girl. She then tossed the animal off her shoulder, who landed with a thud. "Kakin!" cried the animal as he got up. "Seriously, Deku," yelled Kakin, pointing at the animal. "If you want to be a hero, you have to be in your human form. You can't be in your animal form all day." "I know, but I only have 4 hours. We don't know how long the test will take," said Deku. "But shouldn't you be entering the school as a human at least?" said Kakin. Deku sighed, and there was a puff of green smoke. When it cleared, he was now a teen-aged boy wearing a school uniform. He had messy dark green hair and freckles on his cheek. Also, he still had his bunny ears and tail. "Is that better?" asked Deku. Kakin nodded. And both of them headed into the school building. When Deku tripped over his feet. "Of course," groaned Kakin. However, Deku suddenly found himself floating. "What?" he said. "Sorry about that," said rather bubbly voice. They turned and saw a girl with rosy cheeks and shoulder-length brown hair. "It's a bad omen to trip before the exam," said the girl. "No, it's fine," said Deku. The girl put her fingers together and Deku managed to land. "That's such an interesting quirk," said Deku. "You really think so?" asked the girl. Deku nodded. "What does it do?" asked Deku. "It allows me to take the gravity of objects I touch," explained the girl. "That's so cool," sighed Deku. "Well, it was nice talking to you," said the girl. "We do have an exam to take." "You're right," said Deku. "See you later," said the girl, running inside. Deku's tail wagged. "I did it. I talked to a real girl," he said. "Deku," growled out Kakin. Deku froze as he looked at the angry Kakin. "Oh no, I just implied she wasn't a real girl," thought Izuku, who began to sweat a lot. Kakin glared at Deku, then started laugh. "Relax. I'm just FNG with you," said Kakin. Deku breathed a sigh of relief. "I knew what you meant," said Kakin. "I know you would never think that way about me." Deku smiled when she said that. "Besides, I bet by the end of the day you bond with her," said Kakin. "Kakin!" cried Deku. "Come on, we have an exam to take," said Kakin. "Oh right," said Deku. They took the written exam, and soon enough it was time for the orientation for the practical exam. "All right, listeners, are you ready for the practical exam?" yelled the one explaining everything, who was obviously a pro hero. "Everybody say, hi." He got a silence as no one yelled along with him. With Deku and Kakin, as they sat next to each other due to going to the same school, Deku's tail was wagging. "IT's present Mike. I listen to his radio show every day," said Deku. Kakin snorted at her friend. "All right, you're all serious. All right, so this test is going to be a battle simulation in a hip urban setting. You will be fighting faux villain in a fake setting. Each of these faux villains will have a point assigned to it. 1, 2, and 3 pointers. And you have 10 minutes to accumulate as many points as possible, explained the present Mike. Deku looked at both his and Kaken's IDs and saw they were in different battlefields. I guess they don't want friends teams up, said Deku. We wouldn't have teamed up for this anyway, muttered Kaken. But still, what are the opponents? Said Deku, who began to mutter about what the villains could be and how to fight them. Kaken just rolled her eyes at her friend. Excuse me, called out one of the many students. Yes, examinee 7111, said present Mike. The spotlight was shown on a rather tall boy with dark blue hair and glasses. You said there were 3 villains. The pamphlet said there would be 4 of them, said the boy. I would think that an institution such as UA wouldn't make such mistakes. Then the boy turned to where Deku and Kaken were sitting. All you with the rabbit ears? Your muttering is distracting. We're here to try to become heroes. Take things seriously, he yelled out. Deku shivered at the attention, and then he was engulfed by a puff of green smoke and reverted to being an animal. Before Kaken could say anything back at him, present Mike answered him that it was a 0-pointer, just something to act like a distraction. The two listened, but it was clear Kaken was angry. That guy better hope we don't share the same place, muttered Kaken, who started to finger her necklace. I think you'd be disqualified for attacking him, pointed out Deku. I would tail him and steal his points, said Kaken with an evil smirk. I should have known, sighed Deku. They paid attention as present Mike gave them a quote from Napoleon, then gave them the school motto, Go beyond plus ultra, he cheered. But of course no one joined him. They all got ready, with Deku having to be in his human form on the bus right to his testing ground. He was nervous and looked around at the other participants. He considered acting one of his abilities to have them reassure them. Then he noticed the girl he met at the entrance who was trying to calm herself down. He decided to try to help her, however that one boy stopped him. What do you think you're doing? Can't you see she's trying to calm herself? Said the boy. You shouldn't be interrupting her. I didn't mean it like that, said Deku. We are trying to be future heroes. We shouldn't be hindering other students, he told him. Deku didn't say anything. And it only worse as he heard a lot of the other test takers say stuff about him like, that's one less person we have to worry about, and really? He thinks ears and a tail will let him pass. All right, go, 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 they heard present Mike yell. Everyone was confused. There's no countdowns in real battles, yelled present Mike. They realized the test had begun and everyone ran in. At the same time, Kaken was getting ready. Everyone stared at her as she didn't change out of her uniform like everyone else. However, when present Mike yelled this out, she smirked. All right, she said. She grabbed her necklace and suddenly as engulfed in a bright orange light. Back with Deku, he ran through the city. That was when he came across one of the villains. It was a robot and there was a 1 written on. That's 1-pointer, said Deku. He had a plan to deal with them. Looked at the robot and pulled his hand in a certain way. A piece of the robot flew to his hand, disabling it. All right, that's 1 inch, said Deku. Then he ran to find more. Not noticing a disappointed boy nearby laminating that he wasn't able to kill Steel. Izuku found more robots, this time 2 2-pointers. All right, I should use Kaken's then, said Deku. He ran towards the robots and when he was close enough he let loose some explosions form his hands, blowing them up. And it was his strategy, he would blow up the 2 and 3-pointers while ripping out the components out of the 1-pointers. Of course the teachers were watching the exam. One of the teachers, a very thin and skeletal man with messy blonde watching, noticed the fact that Deku seemingly had 2 quirks, a teleclinic one and an explosive one. That was when the principal of the school, a creature that was either a large mouse, a small bear or some kind of dog, noticed his face. I see you're worried about Izuku Midoriya, said the principal. The teacher froze for a second, then turned to the screen with Deku, or rather Izuku, on it. That's part of his quirk, explained the principal. What? Asked the thin teacher. His quirk has multiple aspects. One of them is that it allows him to create bonds with people, explained the principal. Bonds? Said the teacher. The principal nodded. It's a symbiotic bond, He gets a permanent copy of his quirk while in human form, while the one he bonds with gains new abilities including stronger version of their quirks and special armor. Said the principal, in fact won the people. He bonded with is taking the exam. Which one is it? Asked a teacher wearing what appeared to be a space suit. Katsuki Bakugo, she's in a different testing site, said Nizu. The thin teacher turned and to the screens showing that group and saw Kaken, or rather Katsuki. What is she wearing? Asked the thin teacher. I said it was a special armor. Said the principal. That's armor. Asked a teacher wearing a gas mask and was dressed like a cowboy. With Katsuki she was blowing up robots left and right. However, many of the other test taker couldn't help but to stare at her, or rather what she was wearing. It consisted of black sleeveless shirt with an orange X crossing it, a metal collar, a green frilly skirt that somewhat resembled a grenade with the way its frill were, black army boots and green gloves. Over her eyes, which was a black mask that had black and orange spike shape coming from, and right above her mask was the bright orange gem from her necklace. Also her hair was now peppered with bright orange streaks. Back with the teachers, they couldn't help but to stare at the strange outfit. The other person he bonded with was his mother. Explained the principal, that's where the other quirk comes from. The teachers all nodded. However, the thin teacher breathed a sigh of relief. He was uncomfortable with someone displaying multiple quirks, and if there was an explanation for it, even it was particularly strange, it did put him at ease. Back with Katsuki, she decided it was time to up her game. All right. I think it's time to bring that out, she said. She lifted her hand to the gem on her forehead and suddenly an orange light appeared. The light took the form of what appeared to be a wand. The handle was a bright orange while the top was a glimmering green gem that resembled a grenade. She swung her wand and the robots all exploded. The teachers watching stared at this sight. Did she just summon a wand and blew up all those robots with a wave of the wand? Asked a woman teacher dressed like a demonix. Yes, she did. Said the principal, not even hiding amusement in his voice. By the way, I think it's time for the real test. Back with Izuku, he was taking a short break, trying to calculate how many points he had gotten so far. That was when everything began to shake. He turned and saw a giant robot that was emerging. On it was printed 0. That's the 0 pointer, cried Izuku. Everyone started to run away from the giant robot. Izuku was going to run away too, but that was when he heard a cry. He turned and saw the girl from the entrance. She was trapped under rubble, with the 0 pointer looking like it was going to crush her. He didn't even think he ran towards her. As he did, he ran right past that one boy. When he got to the girl, he began to look at the rubble. It's too big to use moms, and I might just hurt her more if I blow it up, he thought. He then remembered what she said about her quirk earlier. That might be my only choice, he thought, realizing it. Hey, he said. She looked up. It's you? Can you help me? She said. I can, but we have to bond, said Izuku. What? Asked the girl. It's part of my quirk. I can form bonds with people, but the bond is permanent. So you'll be stuck with me for the rest of your life, said Izuku, but not physically. We'll have a telepathic bond. It won't be on all the time I have to activate, but every time I activate I'll be there. And she stared at the boy as the 0 pointer headed towards them. I accept, said the girl, knowing they were in danger. Okay, sighed Izuku. She was wondering how this would go. She didn't expect for him to turn into a small stuffed toy-like animal in a puff of smoke. What? She yelled out. It's part of my quirk, said Izuku, blushing. That was when the gem on his forehead started to glow and a small yet bright light emerged from it the same size of the gem. Grab it, said Izuku. The girl managed to reach other and grab it. When she did, she was engulfed a light pink light. She felt a warmth all over her body. Her clothes also turned into something else. It was a light pink and black like leotard. There was a light pink belt. Below the belt was a black skirt with a second layer underneath that was light pink. She also wore puffy light pink boots and over her face a pink visor of some kind. On her wrists were light pink bracelets and she had short sleeves that were light pink clear bubbles, and on her chest was a light pink gemstone. Also, though her hair, she gained light pink streaks, including 2 framing her face. Not only that, but Izuku's forehead gem now shimmered a light pink along with the bright orange and green. The girl also had a feeling, a new power within her. That was when all of the rubble started floating on its own. Though Izuku was also caught up in the zero gravity. No way, she said, getting up. However, the 0-pointer was right on them. Oh no, she cried out. She grabbed the floating animal and then flew away from the giant robot. As they were flying away, she realized two things. One was her quirk drawback wasn't affecting her, it caused nausea, and the other was that she was flying, it was nothing. The bond also powers up your quirk when you're dressed like that. Izuku explained nervously. Really? Asked the girl, who was surprised and excited at this. In the viewing room, all of the teachers had saw this. They knew they had to score both things. However, most of them were just surprised and baffled at what they just saw. Did young Midoriya just turn into a small animal and somehow changed her outfit? Said the thin teacher. He did. Said the principal, sipping tea, amused at all this, and was actually happy to see the bonding in action. He had heard that due to multiple reasons Izuku didn't really bond with people beyond his friend and mother. What is his quirk? Asked the teacher, dressed like a DM Interx. It's called Magical Girl Mascot. Said the principal, once again not hiding any of the amusement from his voice. They all stared at the screen. They realized that the boy small animal had gained enough points to probably pass, meaning that one of the students was going to be a magical girl mascot. In the back of the room, a teacher watched. He was dressed in almost all back expat for a type of scarf. He rubbed his forehead. That kid is going to end up in my class, he muttered to himself, fighting off an oncoming headache. Back in Izuku's testing site, the girl landed just as Present Mike called out, "And time's up." "Are you okay?" asked the girl, putting the small animal down. The animal nodded before turned back into his human form with a puff of green smoke. "I'm fine, what about you?" "I think you might have hurt your leg," said Izuku. "Oh, it's fine," said the girl. "When you did that, I felt it heal right up." "Oh, I didn't know I could do that," said Izuku, surprised. "It's just I've only ever done it twice, and both were accidents, though Mom knew she was doing an said the girl, deciding to stop him. "How do I change my clothes back?" "Oh, you just focus on turning back," said Izuku. The girl did that, and her clothes turned back to the workout clothes she is wearing. She also noticed that she was now wearing a necklace just like Katsuki's, except her gem was a light pink. "Oh right, I should tell Mom and Kaken," said Izuku. "What?" asked the girl. "Hey." She heard Izuku's voice in her head, then remembered what he said about a telepathic bond. "You better have racked up a lot of points, Deku. We are not going with Plan B," came Katsuki's voice. "I'm sure he got enough points," reassured another voice that was clearly an adult woman's. "I think I did," explained Izuku, "but it's not about that." "What is it?" asked the woman's voice. "I bonded with a girl," thought Izuku. "Hi." The girl joined the conversation, realizing if she thought they could hear her. "What?" asked the woman. "There better be a good reason, Deku," responded Katsuki. "She got pinned by debris when the 0-pointer showed up," explained Izuku. "It was the only way to save her." "Okay, that is a good reason," replied Katsuki. 0-pointer? asked the woman. "We'll tell you later, Auntie," replied Katsuki. "Wait, should I join you? I mean," said the girl. "It's better if we all explain it in person," said the woman. "You can just tell your parents you met some new friends at the exam, which is pretty much true," thought Izuku. "You're right," replied the girl. "I'm pretty sure you're getting stares right now, so we'll just meet up at the entrance," said Katsuki. "Later," said Izuku. He cut of the telepathy. "So," said the girl. "Oh, I'm Izuku Midoriya," said Izuku. "Sorry for being stuck with me." "It's fine, it's better than being crushed, and I'm Achiko Uraraka," said the girl named Achiko. "Excuse me," said voice. They turned and saw a small old woman dressed in a lab coat and also had a visor and was using a syringe-shaped cane. "No way! You're recovery girl," skewed Izuku as his tail started to wag. "His tail wags as a human. That's so cute," thought Achiko, blushing. Yes, Now are either of you two injured? Asked the old woman. No, we're fine, said Achiko. However, the two of them were being watched by the boy. He ran in to save her even though it was test. Granted it, if it wasn't a test I would have done the same thing. Thought the boy. Wait, is it possible? Not too longer later, Katsuki was waiting for Izuku and Achiko. Kaken, called out Izuku. Katsuki turned to the two. She looked at the other girl. What the F, Deku? Muttered Katsuki. I was joking earlier when I said you would bond with her. Izuku laughed as he turned back into his animal form. I know, sighed Izuku. Katsuki sighed and smirked. Away, welcome to the team, said Katsuki. Come on, we have a train to catch. Izuku jumped onto Katsuki's shoulder and Achiko followed them. And thus began the story of Izuku Midoriya, who would go on to form bonds with quite a few his classmates, other people who weren't in his class, and would go on to become one of the most interesting heroes of all time. Next time, they explain to Achiko what's the deal with Izuku's quirk while she also adjusts to her new Abelites. Also, their test results, will they get in? Find out next time. Chapter 2, Acceptance. During the train ride, Izuku explained to Achiko part of his situation involving his own transformation, namely that his animal form was his default form. Seriously? Asked Achiko. I can only spend a certain amount of time in my human form, he explained as he sat on Katsuki's shoulder, but the rest of the time. He's a stuffed toy, said Katsuki. Kaken, don't call me that, said Izuku. How long do you have? Asked Achiko. Don't know, said Izuku, who began what appeared to be some sort of mutter spree. I hadn't made a bond since I was 4, and last time it doubled from 2 hours when I first bonded with Kaken to 4 when I bonded with my mom. So I either have 8 hours, or if it just adds 2 hours then I have 6 hours now. Will you shut up? Muttered Katsuki. Wait, were you always like this, or were you born human? Asked Achiko. Born human. Normal ears and no tail. Then when my quirk came in, said Izuku. We thought a villain turned him into that, said Katsuki. No, it's just his weird but quirk. Until I accidentally bonded with Kaken, I was stuck like this for days, said Izuku. She began to pet his head. It's okay now, said Achiko. Please stop petting me, said Izuku. But, said Achiko. Izuku noticed that his tail was wagging as she petted him. Stop that, he hissed at his tail. But of course it wouldn't obey. This only made Achiko laugh. Soon enough they got to the stop and headed to Izuku's apartment. Izuku turned to his human form as he didn't have any pockets or clothes in his animal form. Thankfully, anything he's holding in his human form just goes somewhere. He guesses it's similar to what happens to the clothes and items the others were wearing when they transform into their magical girl form. Mom, I'm home, called out Izuku. I made tea for everyone, called out his mother. They headed to the living room kitchen. Hey Mom, said Izuku. Hello Izuku. Katsuki, said Izuku's mother, who had green hair and appeared to be in her late 20s or early 30s. Achiko noticed that she was also wearing the same type of necklace as she and Katsuki was wearing, except her gem was green. And you're Izuku's new partner. It's nice to meet you. Yeah, it's nice to meet you, Mrs. Midoriya, said Achiko. Oh, you can call me Inko, said Izuku's mom. That was when she started to cry. What? Said Achiko. Mom, cried Izuku. I'm sorry, but you haven't made a bond since you were little, and with everything, I wasn't sure you would ever make another one, cried Inko. Katsuki snorted as she sat down. Come on, you're the one always telling us that hero students would accept us no matter what, said Katsuki. I know, but still, sniffled Inko. Achiko sat down next to Katsuki. Just a heads up, both of them cry a lot, so you better get used to it, said Katsuki. Okay, said Achiko. So you mentioned you had to bond with her to save her, said Inko, managing to calm down. Oh right, said Izuku. This is going to SCK, Katsuki muttered to herself. Izuku explained why he bonded with her and the giant robot. And so they explained about the zero-pointer along with the robot part of the test. Inko just stared at them. Please tell me you're lying, said Inko. None of the three looked at her in the eye. Seriously? Asked Inko. Mom, it's the best hero schools in the country, said Izuku. It makes sense that the test would be that way. I know, but, said Inko, I'm sure Katsuki was. We were assigned different testing grounds, said Izuku. I see. Sighed Inko. Well, at least both of you are safe and didn't fight that 0-pointer. Izuku nodded. However, Katsuki was calmly sipping her tea. Both Inko and Izuku stared at the girl. Really, Kaken? Asked Izuku. I don't know what you mean, said Katsuki. Flashback. Katsuki was using her wand to cause explosions to blow up all over the 0-pointer, damaging it. Sure, she wasn't getting any points, but still, it was a great way to test her wand's capabilities. She knew quite a bit, but it's always good to learn more. Die! She yelled at the robot. Of course, those sharing the test area just stared at the girl. End of flashback. Said Achiko, deciding to change the subject. You look so young. I was surprised to know you're his mom. Oh, I get that all the time, said Inko. I haven't aged since I bonded with Izuku. The doctors think that his quirk stopped my aging, and it might happen to you and Katsuki after a certain point. Achiko was just shocked by this. Are you serious? Asked Achiko in shock. There are a lot we have to tell you, sighed Izuku. They told her about his copying ability as well as the fact that Achiko can summon a wand that would utilize her quirk in a certain way, along with the name of Izuku's quirk, which did make her giggle. Also, they told her about the side effect if a male makes a bond and what happens to them, and told them how they knew that. Katsuki was glaring at her. I'm fine with it, said Achiko. It's not your fault it happened. Izuku breathed a sigh of relief when she said, while Katsuki snorted. Deku, said Katsuki. Achiko froze as she felt the telepathic connection again open. Seriously, she said out loud. Izuku, scolded Inko telepathically. Sorry, it's just, said Izuku, closing it off. We're not exactly popular at our school, muttered Katsuki. There's plenty of kids we grew up with and those that didn't still heard about it. The fuckers always say stuff like, oh, there's brainwashing involved, or that Deku steals souls. Honestly, the teachers don't do anything, and if they're in the room they don't even try to stop it, honestly. It's always been the two of us against the world. That's horrible, said Achiko. I was right though, said Inko. About what? Asked Achiko. I always reassured them that if they go to hero school, those learning how to be heroes won't care and will see them for them, said Inko. Achiko looked at the two of them. It was clear they had been through a lot. We're partners now, right? Asked Achiko. Izuku smiled. And hopefully all three of you will be accepted, said Inko. Izuku sighed. Deku, I'm sure you got enough points, muttered Katsuki. I know you got a lot of points, said Izuku. I just don't want to do Plan B. What's Plan B? Asked Achiko. See, I could be registered as Katsuki's animal partner, said Izuku, blushing. Achiko stared at Izuku, who was blushing so hard. But you're human, said Achiko. But most of the item I'm in my animal form, and even if I go to sleep as a human I'll end up turning back, said Izuku. We won't have to do it, Deku. I'm sure you have enough points, said Katsuki. Izuku was blushing even more. Before Achiko left they exchanged phone numbers so they could have conversations one-on-one. Though they did tell here was a nightly telepathic conversation between them, and since Izuku hadn't figured out how to make it one-on-one yet, it was a group conversation. But it was fun. Achiko was a really nice girl, although she lived far away. Though if got into UA, then she would move much closer. Over the course of the next week Izuku was still worried. That is until Inko showed up with a letter from UA. It's here, said Inko. Izuku decided to read it alone. He went to room. He opened the letter and it was a holograph disc that came to on right away. I am here. As a hologram. The hologram came to life, showing a very muscular man with blonde hair and a bright smile. All Might. I thought this was Form UA, said Izuku, though his tail was wagging seriously. All Might was the great of all heroes and Izuku was a big fan. Like really big. Like his room was covered in his posters and other merch. Big fan. Ever since was a child he looked up to All Might. And to have a holographic letter from him. Now you must be wondering why I'm here. You see, starting this year you are looking at the new heroics teacher at UA, said All Might. No way, said Izuku. All Might nodded. Now let's get into your test scores. Your written exam was one of the highest, but of course you can't get into the hero course on just the written test alone. You managed to get a score of 34, not bad. However, the truth is there was a metric we don't tell those taking the tests, explained the All Might hologram. Izuku's eyes widened. You see, there was an additional set of scores we judge on. After all, we are trying to teach heroes? Asked All Might. That was when it started showing footage of when he saved Ochako. You see, in addition to all of the villain points we have award rescue points, said All Might. The teachers act as judges, though there were a few problems as they were distracted by your unique quirk. Yeah, that's kind of understandable, said Izuku. He knew his quirk was interesting. Once they were able to rewatch it, it was determined that your rescue of young Uraraka was worth 50 rescue points, meaning you have a total of 83 points. No way, said Izuku, tail wagging like crazy. Welcome to You Hero Academia, said All Might with a grin. Izuku's tail was wagging like crazy. He activated the telepathy. Did you guys get your letters yet? Asked Izuku. Yeah, yelled Katsuki. I beat up 103 points of villains. Got first place too. All right, Kaken, cheered Ochako, who had since picked up the two nicknames. What about you, Deku? I got over 30 villain points and 50 rescue points when I saved you, explained Izuku. I got 28 villain points and 45 rescue points, said Ochako. I'm in too. Wait, rescue points? Asked Katsuki. Turned out there was a secret point system, said Izuku. And Katsuki, you just fought the villains, didn't you? Asked Inko, who quickly put together the pieces. They just told us to fight the villains, muttered Katsuki. How was I supposed to know we also had to help people? Besides, when we become heroes, that will be Deku's job. He'll save them while I fight the villains. Izuku sighed at his friend. But still, cheered Ochako, all of us are going to you. Are you two ready? You still have a couple months, giggled Inko. Plus you three still need to graduate before you can go to UA. By the way, Deku, said Ochako, how much did your tail wag when you saw All Might? Oh, come on, said Izuku. I bet so much wagging, laughed Katsuki. Please stop, sighed Izuku. He could even hear his own mother join in the giggles. But still, all of them were going to UA. But of course they had to deal with their middle schools until graduation, which included Katsuki and Izuku being brought to the principal to congratulate them. As he did, Katsuki just glared at the principal. Wow. The two top students were let in the best hero school in the country and even getting some of the top scores at that. After the meeting, Katsuki unleashed some explosions. That BC, yelled Katsuki. Congratulate us when all of the teachers just turned their backs when the entire school belittled and bullied us. That two-faced BSRD. Katsuki, calm down, please, begged Izuku. Katsuki began to calm down. You know what, I think for the first time in my life I won't be getting mad, said Katsuki. I have a bad feeling about this, said Izuku. Katsuki took out her phone. Turned out she often filmed the bullying that the teacher ignored. She decided for once in her life to listen to the phrase, don't get mad, get even. During break, Katsuki anonymously released the video online about the bullying, so much that there was an investigation opened up. Turned out with the rise of quirks there were anti-bullying laws set up. After all, with so many people with powers, if someone was bullied they could use their quirk to do something to the school. It wasn't all brining down their school. Ochako had to move somewhere close to the school. Thankfully, Inko helped in trying to find the girl an apartment close by, and found a cheap one-room, with Inko offering the girl to each over for dinner whenever she needed to. Her parents at first were worried when a boy had mind-linked, but after learning that it wasn't all the time, that there were two others, including another girl and his mother, they realized it should be fine. Especially since Inko was a big help and promising to look after the girl. Also, while she didn't see it on her first visit, Ochako finally saw Izuku's room. During the first week she had learned that Izuku was a huge All Might fan during the conversations. But she finally saw his room. She couldn't help to giggle at the rather fun combination. Due to the fact that his default form was that of his animal form, most of the furniture of the room was tiny. A little bed, a little desk and chair. There were a couple regular-sized chairs, plus some full-sized shelves just to keep some of his All Might stuff. But the combination of the All Might nerd room and the adore tiny furniture got Ochako laughing. "Please stop," cried Izuku. "But it's so cute," laughed Ochako. Izuku sighed. Also during this time, there was a meeting where it was decided that something should happen during the school year. "I need 2 more partners by the end of the school year?" asked Izuku. "Why?" "Izuku, you need more time as a human," said Inko. "If you're going to be a hero, you can't limit yourself to 6 hours," said Katsuki. Izuku sighed and knew that they had a point. After figuring out that adding another partner added 2 hours to his time and not doubled it. "But what if they all reject me?" asked Izuku. "I doubt we'll be the only 2 girls in class," said Katsuki. "I'm sure there would be someone in class who would want to bond," said Ochako. "Besides, the deadline is the end of the school year. I'm sure by that point you'll befriend 2 girls who would want to join you." "But what if?" said Izuku. "Deku, I doubt you'd end up in a class of only guys," said Katsuki with a sweat drop. Izuku sighed. He just hoped they would write. Katsuki and Izuku also during this time brought Ochako to a place they usually secretly trained, a beach that was a literal dump. "I know I haven't really had the chance to use my powers since the exam," sighed Ochako, "but this place? No cares about this place," said Katsuki. "We've been using this place for years and like Kaken just said, no one cares," said Izuku in his animal form. "Okay," sighed Ochako. She grabbed her necklace and transformed. She remembered how she was able to use her quirk without touching anything. This time, thankfully, nothing was just floating around her. However, she did look at something and the motion over to it. It started to float. "I don't even have to touch it," said Ochako. "That's all well and good, but you need your weapon," said Katsuki. "Weapon?" asked Ochako. "Oh wait, you mean the wand?" "Katsuki just likes calling it that because, well," said Izuku. "Look, just place your hand on your gem and focus," said Katsuki. It should appeared. Ochako did so and a light pink light erupted from the gem, and that light took the form of a wand with a light pink handle. At the tip of the wand was a bubble, and with that bubble was a yellow star. "Oh wow," said Ochako. "So how does it work?" "Just point at it as something and see what happens," said Katsuki with a shrug. Ochako pointed it as garbage. They started to float, but something in the mind told her to try something else. She focused on the feeling and the garbage that was floating fell down with a mighty crash. "No way," said Ochako, figuring it out. "No way. With you wand, not only do you remove the gravity from items but can also increase it." "That's so awesome," said Izuku with his tail wagging. "This is so awesome," cheered Ochako. "I think she might be going mad with power," snorted Katsuki. "So did you when you found your wand?" joked Izuku. Katsuki glared at the small animal. "Please don't look at me that way, Kaken," cried Izuku. But of course spring break would eventually end and it would soon be the first day of school. Izuku left the apartment in his human form. Though he knew had to go most of the way in his animal form, thankfully Ochako was going to help him to school because, well, tiny animal wasn't exactly something that should take the train alone. "Do you have your handkerchief?" said Inko. "I do," said Izuku. "Pocket tissue," said Inko. "I do," said Izuku. "You didn't fill your backpack with action figures?" asked Inko. "I haven't done that in years," said Izuku. "Ochiko's waiting for me. He was just about to leave." "Wait, Izuku," said Inko. "Yeah?" asked Izuku. "You look so cool," said Inko. Izuku smiled brightly. He headed out and got to the entrance of the apartment complex where Ochako was waiting for him. He saw her in the uniform and blushed. "Everything okay?" asked Ochako. "It's fine," said Izuku. He switched to his animal form and jumped onto Ochiko's shoulder. "You ready to go to UA?" asked Ochako. Izuku smiled as he rode on her shoulder. And so their first day at UA would begin. Next time, it's the first day of school. However, they are put through a series of tests and the person in last place would be expelled. What will happen? Find out next time. Chapter 3, Quirk Assessment. They got to the school, exchanged shoes, and Izuku going into human form to introduce himself better this way, and headed towards the classroom, which they thankfully shared. Izuku marveled at the massive door. It must be for people who can't turn off their gigantism quirks, said Izuku. Izuku was the one to try to open the door, but he was nervous. What's wrong? Asked Ochako. It's just I'm a bit nervous of that one guy sharing the class, said Izuku. Ochako remembered about the boy calling out Izuku during the exam. There's a good chance he's not in our class. I'm sure it will be fine, said Ochako. Izuku opened the door and they found that yes, he was in the class, and also Katsuki beat them to the classroom and had gotten into a fight with him. Katsuki was putting her feet on top of a desk with the boy scolding her. Of course, sighed Izuku, and Kaken clearly remembers what he did. Let me start over. My name is Tenya Ida and I went to Sumai, said the boy named Tenya Ida. So private school boy. I bet that's where you got that large stick up your butt, said Katsuki. That was when Ida noticed Izuku. It's you, said Ida walking towards him. My name is Tenya Ida? I heard you introduce yourself to Kaken, said Izuku nervously. I'm Izuku Midoriya. That was when suddenly he bowed to Izuku. I apologize for my behavior before the exam. I now understand that you are the superior candidate, he said. What? Asked Izuku. Oh, I think he means the rescue points, said Ochako. Oh right. I wasn't thinking of that, said Izuku. Katsuki grumbled but knew she had to do it. All right, but munches, listen up. Deku is my brother in all but blood, yelled Katsuki. You got a problem with him and you got a problem with me. Izuku sighed at this. Most of the class was staring at Katsuki. As it turned out, Katsuki made some alterations to her uniform. She didn't wear the tie and she wore the skirt much shorter. So it looked very weird that such a girl would be defending a boy with a rather adorable-looking quirk. Kaken, said Izuku. That was when the class noticed a man in a sleeping bag behind Ochako and Izuku, causing the two to jump at the man. I was going to say something about making friends, but I think you should also avoid making enemies, said the man getting up. Everyone in class stared at him, unsure how to respond to him. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. That's 8 seconds wasted, he said, getting out of his sleeping bag. Oh, right, I'm you home teacher Aizawa. The class stared at the man who was dressed rather slovenly, and yes, he was the teacher who knew that Izuku was going to end up in his class. In fact, he stared at Izuku, Katsuki and Ochako for a brief second before continuing. All right, I want all of you to put on this and meet me outside, he said, taking out the gym uniform. You have 10 minutes. Thankfully, everyone in class joined him outside within the time limit. What about orientation? Said Ochako. UA has a free style of learning and it allows the teachers to do the same, said Aizawa. I find that things such as orientation and opening ceremonies unimportant to hero work. Instead, we're going to do a quirk assessment. The students were confused. Bakugo, you got the highest score in the exam, said Aizawa. He tossed her a ball. What's the highest score you got in the softball throw? Said Aizawa. 75 meters, muttered Katsuki. I want you to use your quirk for this. Normally I would say anything goes, but I would like to say you use your quirk and only your quirk. No other abilities given to you by someone else, said Aizawa. Katsuki scowled, knowing what he was getting at. Fine, she muttered, glaring at him. She held the ball and summoned her quirk. Die, she yelled at the top of her lungs, sending the ball soaring through the air with a very large explosion. Aizawa held up his phone showing how far the ball went, which was over 700 meters. We get to use our quirks, awesome, yelled a boy with blonde hair and a black stripe in whose name was Denki Kaminari. This is so much fun. I want to try, cheered a girl that was completely pink and had horns on her head named Mina Ashido. You think it would be fun with Murphy calls, fires, villain attacks, floods? You think it would be fun then? Said Aizawa. You will be spending the years learning how to be heroes. You can't expect to go out after school to hang out at McDonald's. They all looked at him nervously. That's why whoever get last place will get expelled, said Aizawa. Oh, but that's unfair, cried Ochako. Life isn't fair, said Aizawa. By the way, the same rule applies to you as it does Bakugo, no outside abilities other than your quirk. Ochako nodded. Most of the students were worried, though Katsuki was among the ones that wasn't. Soon it was time for the first real event, which was 50-meter dash, which was done in pairs. You're not getting last place, Deku, muttered Katsuki, trying not reassure Izuku. But, said Izuku. Just pay attention to the girls, said Katsuki. Izuku's sweat dropped at this. The first two to go was Ida against a frog-like girl named Tsuyu Azui. An interesting thing was that Ida's leg that had an engine that gave him super speed, while Ochako went up absent a boy with a tail named Mashireo Ojiro. Izuku also paid attention to the match with Ishido, again a boy with a boy who shot a very sparkly laser from his stomach named Yuga Aoyama. After both Katsuki and Izuku were called up against each other. He did this purpose, sighed Izuku. Whatever, let's see who's better at this, said Katsuki. Izuku nodded. Izuku activated Katsuki's quirk and both of them were propelled by the explosions from their hand. However, Katsuki got 4.13 while Izuku got 4.61 seconds. Seriously, Deku? Asked Katsuki. You're in a lot better shape than I am, said Izuku. You got that right, snorted Katsuki. The second event, Izuku changed things up, with grip strength. He used his mother's quirk to pull the grip machoism towards him. It wasn't a lot, but it was probably better if he did it with his hand. But it was far less than the top student, a boy who had tentacles that could be turned into duplicate arms named Mizo Shoji. For the third event, Izuku seemed a little nervous. You look like you got an idea, joked Ochako. I do, I hope it works, said Izuku. The third event was the long jump. Izuku started the event by using Ochiko's quirk and jump high into the air. Then mid-leap he suddenly switched to Katsuki's. Thanks to how high he was combined with the propulsion, he ended up going much farther than anyone else. Okay, that interesting, Deku, laughed Katsuki as Izuku ran back. Izuku laughed knowing that a compliment from Katsuki. She's right, said Ochako. That was awesome. Yeah, said Izuku. Izuku could only use one at a time, however he knew how to quickly switch. I don't know if I'll get the chance to do something like that again, laughed Izuku. But still it was awesome, said Ochako. They didn't notice that there were people staring at them. Two of them was because of jealously in the form of Kaminari and a really short boy with purple hair and hairball named Minoru Mineta. Another was Ida. Not because of jealously but because he was trying to figure out Izuku's quirk, especially since he had witnessed the bonding from a distance. I'll ask him later, thought Ida. The next one was repeated sidesteps. Once again, Izuku used Katsuki's tactic. But it was Mineta who got the score as his quirk allowed him to pull off his hairball and bounce off them. Though in reality it was the next event, the ball throw, that was the one where everyone really got to show off, it seemed like. One girl with a large ponytail named Momo Yayarozu created a cannon and shot the ball out. A boy with a rock-like head named Koji Koda got a bird to carry the ball away. A boy with a bird head named Fumikage Tokoyami got a shadow creature that lived inside of him to toss the ball as far as it could. Though it was Ochako who got the high score with Infit when she got the ball into space. Well, I know which one you're going to copy, snorted Katsuki. That was when Izuku felt a twitch in his nose. Oh no, he thought. Katsuki noticed the look on his face, as did Ochako, who saw what happens during that 2 weeks before school started. He sneezed, and suddenly he was engulfed by smoke. Those that didn't know about his transformation all jumped. Though it appeared that Ida, Aoyama, and Shoji all didn't look too surprised when the smoke cleared and the Izuku stood there in animal form. Of course I don't get to properly explain it to people, sighed Izuku. What the? Said Kaminari. Did he turn into a stuffed toy? Asked a boy with spiky red hair and sharp teeth named Eijiro Kirishima. Oh, he's so cute, gushed an invisible girl named Toru Hagakure. It's part of my quirk, sorry about it, said Izuku, who then turned back human. If I sneeze as a human I transform. Midoriya, after that you're going next, said Aizawa glaring at him. Izuku laughed. He knew he was going to get tied for first place. When he was given the ball, he activated Ochiko's quirk, and much like before, it was sent flying high into the sky and didn't come back down, so he shared the infinity score. Aizawa sighed. He knew that Izuku had a copy of Ochiko's quirk, so he should have known that would be the result. He rejoined Katsuki and Ochiko. However, Izuku kept getting stares. Part of my quirk is also a copy quirk, said Izuku. Seriously? Asked a boy with somewhat long black hair and tape dispensers in his arms named Hantashiro. My quirk is really complicated, said Izuku, and I. However, that was when he sneezed again, turning him back into his animal form. Almost everyone stared at this. This really weird, said a girl with audio jacks on her ears named Kyokajiro. How does copying quirks and being an animal connected? Said a rather muscular boy with big lips named Rikido Sato. Who knows? Said Jiro. However, a boy whose hair was red on his left side and white on his right side named Shoto Todoroki stared at Izuku as he changed back. The remaining tests were okay for Izuku. 2 of them he didn't use a quirk due to the fact that, well, none of them were good for the endurance running and sit-ups. But for seated toe touches, he once again used his mom's quirk to put himself towards his shoes. And soon enough it was time for the test results. I won't go into details for the scoring, but here are the results, said Aizawa. Izuku looked for his name and breathed a sigh of relief that he was nowhere near last place. Come on, Deku, you got first in place in one of them and tied for first place in another. Of course you won't going to get last place, muttered Katsuki. Yeah, said Izuku. However, they heard crying and saw Mineta had gotten last place. At least it wasn't that invisible girl, muttered Katsuki. Izuku nodded. After all, there were 5 girls, and he knew he had to get to know them well enough for 2 of them agree to a bond. Oh, no one is getting expelled, said Aizawa. It was just a logical ruse for everyone to do their best. Honestly, said Yaoyorozu, it was obvious that's what he was doing. I'm surprised no one else figured it out. I'm not expelled, cried Mineta. I won't lose my chances with girls. All 7 girls of the class stared at that grape-headed Fing idiot, muttered Katsuki. There's a syllabus on your desks and I expect you all to read it. You're demised, said Aizawa, who then left. Wait, I have a question, clawed out Izuku. Katsuki face-palmed, knowing what this was going to be about. What is it? Asked Aizawa, knowing what the question probably was. Which hero are you? Asked Izuku. I'm the underground hero Ezerhead, said Aizawa, but I doubt you've heard of me. Actually I have, said Izuku, whose tail started to wag. Your work let you temporarily erase any emitter or transformation quirks you're looking at, and can you please stop? Groaned Aizawa. Sorry, said Izuku. Aizawa just sighed. Of course the magical girl Mascot had to be a hero fanboy. Is his tail wagging? Asked Sato with a sweat drop. It does that? Muttered Katsuki. It's adorable, laughed Hagakure. Not too longer later, Izuku was at the school entrance waiting for Katsuki and Ochiko. That was when someone grabbed his shoulder. Midoriya, said the person. How was Ida? Izuku jumped at this and ended up transforming into his animal form because of the surprise. Oh, I apologize for surprising you, said Ida. No, it's fine. I have to stop transforming when I get surprised, sighed Izuku, knowing he shouldn't transform back. Even if he had the time, until he felt like he had enough time, he should travel in his animal form. Are you unable to transform back? Asked Ida. No. I have a 6-hour time limit in my human form, said Izuku. I'm not close to hitting it, but I don't want to get into the habit of traveling in my human form until I'm able to extend my time limit. I see, said Ida, but still I don't approve of Aizawa's hazing. What the F are you doing? Yelled Katsuki, glaring at Ida. Ida froze, remembering the declaration of protection that morning. I mean no ill will, said Ida. He wants to be my friend, said Izuku. Whatever. I'll give you a chance, but don't screw it up, muttered Katsuki as Izuku jumped onto her shoulder. Ida immediately got the feeling that there was something going on. You guys ready? asked Ochako, finally showing up. Oh, Infinity Girl, said Ida. Infinity Girl? Asked Ochako. Oh yeah, my score. I'm Ochako Uraraka. And I am Tenya Ida, he said, giving his introduction. So they all walked to the train station together. Ever since the exam I've been curious, said Ida. How did you save Uraraka exactly? Oh, you saw the bonding, didn't you? Asked Izuku, realizing it. Bonding? Asked Ida. He knew had to tell his classmates about it, so he gave most of the details about his quirk. I see, said Ida, who actually seemed somewhat interested. You don't want to do it, said Izuku. What? Asked Ida. There's a side effect if a guy bonds with him, said Katsuki. What sort of side effect? Said Ida. None of your business, muttered Katsuki. Kakin, said Ochako. Look, I don't fully trust him yet, said Katsuki, considering what he did during the exam. It sounds very personal and I won't push for it, said Ida. Thanks for understanding, said Izuku. If it's not rude to ask, how long have you been bonded for? Asked Ida. Like a week after Deku got his quirk, said Katsuki. If you've been bonded for that amount of time, I can understand your declaration of protection, said Ida. Don't even call it that, because it wasn't one, yelled Katsuki. The others all sweat dropped knowing that's what it was. Katsuki just glared at them. Whatever, she muttered. But still they continued on to the train station, with Izuku happy to make a new friend that was outside of him bonding with someone. And also he hoped he would figure out how to befriend 2 of the girls in his class. But still he was going to UA and one step closer to being a hero. Next time, it's their first hero class. And it takes the form of a 2-on-2 match with them in the roles of heroes and villains, but when hero team is Izuku and Ochako and the villains are Katsuki and Ida, things are going to get interesting. Especially since Izuku knows he can do a stealth run. What will happen? Find out next time. Chapter 4. Hide and Seek. Going to UA in the mornings was just like going to a regular school, much to a good chunk of the class disappointment. Though all of the teachers were pro-heroes, which was cool, even if what they were talking was normal school stuff. Though thankfully the teachers let Izuku take the classes in animal form, only transforming to human form if he had to ask a question or was called on. Most of the neighboring students had to get used to the puffs of smoke called by the transformation. But what everyone was looking forward to hero class, but that would be after lunch. And lunch was actually something Izuku was looking forward to, not because of the food, which was also cooked by a pro hero, but because it was the first time he and Katsuki would eating lunch at school with friends. Of course his tail waged when meeting the pro that cooked for them. Though the lunch conversation explains something about his powers. So you have to eat like that? Said Ida. Yeah, sighed Izuku, who was eating in animal form on Katsuki's lap. Why? Asked Ida. Portions. My stomach is smaller like this, and if I eat a full-sized portion in human form and I suddenly transform back, said Izuku. You don't need to say more, said Ida, immediately knowing what he meant. I think my body adjusts what I eat between forms so that the smaller meals work for my human form, said Izuku, begging a mutter spree. Or even in human form my knows how to regulate the calorie intake? Or possibly. Is he all right? Asked Ida. He does this, muttered Katsuki, used to it. It's even funnier when he does during the telepathic conversations. Laughed Ochako. Says you? Muttered Katsuki. I'm right here, said Izuku, who had stopped muttering, and sweat dropped. There was an awkward silence. So can you tell me more about your telepathic bond? Asked Ida quickly, the subject. After lunch it was the class everyone was waiting for, heroics. And it was taught by All Might. I am coming through the door like a normal person, said All Might. It's really All Might. And he's wearing his Silver Age costume, squeaked Izuku, who was in human form this class. Also his tail was wagging like crazy. Midoriya, control your tail, yelled Mineta, who was the unlucky student who sat behind him as he was getting a large gust of wind from the tail. All right, now I know you're all excited for your first hero class, but there is something that all heroes will need, said All Might. He took out a switch and part of the wall opened up, revealing multiple metal cases. Costumes, yelled most of the class. Katsuki snorted at their reaction as most of the class was excited. But to be fair, she did have her costume since she was 4, so she was used to it. However, Izuku was more interested in what his support gear was like. His actual costume, on the other hand, flashback. Izuku and Katsuki were going over Izuku's costume. I keep telling you, something over your head will make your ears uncomfortable, said Katsuki. But, said Izuku, who wanted to go with that design. Stop trying to copy All Might, your powers are extremely different from All Might, said Katsuki. Izuku sighed. Izuku, said Inko, showing up. The two looked at her. I know it isn't much, but I got you a gift for passing the exam, said Inko. She took out a simple jumpsuit. I know it isn't that nice or flashy, said Inko. No, it's perfect, said Izuku. Katsuki watched as the two talked about and hugged. She knew Izuku was a bit of a mama's boy, but she would never call him out on. You know, with that out of the way, we still need to work on other parts of your costume, pointed Katsuki. We need something for you head that will look cool, that's not an imitation All Might mask. Izuku's sweat dropped while Inko giggled. End of flashback. All right. So put on your costumes and meet me at training ground Beta, called out All Might. All of the students went to the locker rooms to get dressed. However, in the girls' locker room, both Achiko and Katsuki just waited for the other girls to get dressed. Hey, wait. Why aren't you putting on your costumes? Asked Hagakure, who was the first one done, as her costume just consisted of a pair of gloves and a pair of shoes. She was invisible after all. Our costumes are special, said Achiko. How so? Asked Hagakure. The two looked at each other and nodded. Both of them grabbed their necklaces and transformed. Their classmates watched in surprise. No way, said Hagakure. Where did you get those? Said Ishido. You have to ask Deku, said Katsuki with a smirk. He's the one that gave us these costumes, said Achiko. In fact, he made them. They saw the looks on their classmates' faces. Azui and Jiro looked a little curious, Yaoyorozu looked very curious, Ishido looked very interested, and Hagakure was invisible and was only wearing a pair of gloves and shoes, so they couldn't judge from her body language. And soon enough, all of the students all gathered in their costumes. Izuku's was actually quite simple. He wore the jumpsuit his mother gave him. A pair of fingerless white gloves that had tubes connecting to a belt, with small container in the belt. He wore his favorite pair of shoes, bright red sneakers, and a green visor covered his eyes. It wasn't much, but he felt he had to have something on his face or head. All right, said All Might, looking at the students. Now you all look like heroes. Hey Midori, called out Ishido. Izuku jumped. That was when he noticed Ishido, Hagakure, and Yaoyorozu all looking at him. Well, he figured Hacker was looking at him. We were wondering, how did you create those costumes for Bakugo and Uraraka? Said Yaoyorozu. Wait, said Izuku. He turned to his two partners. Katsuki was smirking and Achiko was smiling somewhat sheepishly. No, said Izuku. He opened up his telepathy and did something he knew he had to. He tattled. Kaken and Achiko advertised their costumes to the other girls, thought Izuku. Oh honey, if you're going to get 2 more partners by the end of the school year, you know they have to help you, replied Inko. That was when both Katsuki and Achiko started laughing hysterically. Seriously, Deku, what did you think was going to happen? Pointed out Katsuki as she was still laughing, that she would take your side. Izuku pouted a little. Midoriya, are you okay? Asked Yaoyorozu. I'm fine. Ending the telepathic conversation. Sorry, it's just that it's connected to my quirk and… Wait, you gave them costumes like that, and it's part of your quirk? Said Hagakure. Yeah, said Izuku. Wait, are you a magical girl mascot? Said Hagakure. Izuku froze when she said that. He didn't expect a girl in class to be a fan of magical girls. He looked at Katsuki and Achiko, who both shrugged. Well, there was a good chance she might end up being one of his partners by the end of the year. But before more could be said, All Might cleared his throat, and it was time to discuss how the class was going to work. All right, all of you are looking good, said All Might. Are you ready for today's lesson, newbies? Because it's battle training. Are you sure it's a good idea? Asked Azui. Shouldn't we be doing basic training? There's nothing more basic than battle, said All Might. Are we going to be battling like the entrance exam? Asked Ida, who was wearing a costume that made up of armor. No, you're going to have a fight indoors this time, said All Might. After all, many villain fights happen indoors. Hostage situations, evil plots, that sort of thing. Now do you have any questions? And then the flood of questions came. How will the matches be determined? Asked Ida. What will determine victory? Asked Yayarozu. Will we have worry about being expelled if we lose? Sked Ochiko. Isn't this cape? Trace chic, Sked Aoyama, showing off his very sparkly cape. Slow down, my Quirk isn't super hearing, said All Might. That was when he took out his notes and explained how it will go down. The scenario was that 2 students would be heroes and 2 other will be villains. The plot was that the villains had captured a nuclear bomb and had 15 minutes until it detonated. The heroes must capture the villains in order to stop the bomb. In order to win for the heroes, they must either capture both villains or capture the bomb by just touching it, while the villains win by either capturing the heroes or time runs out. It was during the explanation Izuku realized something. If you're the hero, a stealth approach would be best, Izuku said to himself out loud. Katsuki smirked, knowing what Izuku was getting at. If you end up as a hero, I feel really bad for the villain, said Katsuki. All right. For the pairings we will be choosing by lots, said All Might. Is that a good idea? Asked Ida. It makes sense, said Izuku, because heroes often have to team up with heroes from other agencies. Oh, I see. I believe I understand, said Ida. Time to draw lots, said All Might. As it turned out, Izuku was in Team A with Ochiko. We got lucky, said Ochiko. Izuku nodded as his tail waged a little. Whole Katsuki and Ida were placed in the same team as Team D. Could be worse, muttered Katsuki. Ida wasn't sure what to say to the explosive girl. All right, time for the first hero team. Team A against the first villain team. Team D, said All Might. Katsuki's eye started to twitch. F-, she yelled. All Might gave advice to the villains really play into the role of villains, and they were given time to set up the fake bomb. In the building it was meant to go down, Katsuki was just pinching the bridge of her nose while Ida examined the fake bomb. So this is the bomb, said Ida, who knocked on it and made a hollow sound. Fake, of course. He then sighed. It pains me to play the villain, but in order to be a hero, said Ida. He finally noticed his partner. Bakugo, are you all right? He asked. We are going to lose, muttered Bakugo. What? Asked Ida. I said we are going to lose, yelled Bakugo. What makes you think that? Asked Ida. Bakugo sighed. Outside, Izuku and Ochiko were strategizing, and thankfully Izuku had one set up. So what is it? Asked Ochiko. When I was little, I figured out a way to utilize my animal form, said Izuku. Really? Asked Ochiko. Izuku nodded. Flashback. A young Katsuki was waiting in the park. Hey Kaken, called out Izuku in animal form, running toward her. I came up with an idea how to be a hero in my animal form. Katsuki turned towards him and Izuku noticed something about her. Oh, is that another new dress? Said Izuku. What about it? Muttered Katsuki, glaring at the small animal in front of her like she was going to kill him. Oh, nothing, squeaked out Izuku. So what was this about being a hero? Said Katsuki. I figured out I can use this to be sneaky, said Izuku. What do you mean? Asked Katsuki. I mean, sometimes a hero has to sneak into places. And if I use this to sneak into places, said Izuku, the villains won't notice you, said Katsuki. Izuku nodded. Come on, let's play hide and seek, said Izuku. Katsuki quickly deduced why. Okay, said Katsuki. So hide and seek became a new training for Izuku's animal form. End of flashback. Back in the villain base. So we have to keep an eye out for Deku, said Katsuki. He's a stealth expert. I didn't expect him to be one, said Ida, surprised. Deku's smart when it comes analysis, said Katsuki. Really? Asked Ida. And he's working with round face, muttered Katsuki. Wait, can't you interfere with the telepathic bond? Said Ida. He's not going to use it. He can't make it one-on-one, said Katsuki. One day he might figure it out, but for now it's on group chat mode. He probably would have used it if I wasn't one he's fighting. I see, said Ida. Unless we see him before he gets the bomb, then we're effed, muttered Katsuki. Don't give up just yet. I'm sure we'll be able to figure out his plan, said Ida. Outside, Izuku finished up explaining his plan. I don't think Kaken will see that coming, giggled Achiko. She's already paranoid as it is, but this plan, said Izuku as he handed her his earpiece. He turned to his animal form and placed his earpiece into his ear, thankfully fitted in animal form. Just be careful, said Achiko. I don't know what might happen if you're using it too long. That was when there was chime and the hero team knew that they had to go in. Achiko helped Izuku with the first part of the plan. Then she went in to find the bomb. As the next stage of the plan. She found it in a large room where the two were waiting. We don't know when they will show up, said Ida, but it's still a good idea to get into the mindset. What? Asked Katsuki. And that was when he decided to go into character. I am the ultimate evil, said Ida, putting on a menacing voice. That was when Achiko started to laugh hysterically. Uraraka, I've found you, called out Ida. Of course she'd give herself away, muttered Katsuki. Achiko sighed, but it was better for her to catch them. After all, she was the distraction. Deku was the one handing the bomb. You gave yourself away, hero, Ida mockingly told her. You idiot, muttered Katsuki. She's a distraction. What? Yelled Ida. I told you Deku's a stealth expert, said Katsuki. And he told me that you lost most of your hide-and-seek games, giggled Achiko. Only when he started getting good at it, yelled Katsuki. Even so, said Ida, I have cleared up the room. Without debris, I doubt there is much you can do. That's why you were cleaning the room, yelled Katsuki. You didn't know what I was doing? Asked Ida. I thought you were just bored and decided to clean, muttered Katsuki. That was when Achiko summoned her wand. Sheet, yelled Katsuki. What? Asked Ida. She pointed her wand at the two of them, and gravity for them was turned off. How is this possible? Yelled Ida. It's part of the power-up Deku gave her, said Katsuki. In the viewing room, the other students were watching in surprise when she summoned her wand. No way, said Hagakure. It even give her a wand. That is so cool. Where did that wand even come from? Asked Kaminari. I saw it came from that jewel she's wearing, said Hagakure. I can't believe that our classmate is a magical girl mascot. All Might coughed, or rather fake coughed at being reminded of the fact that one of his hero students was a magical girl mascot. Back with the fight. Katsuki knew she had to fight back. Keep an eye for Deku when you crash back down, said Katsuki. What? Asked Ida. Katsuki summoned her own wand. Let's have a FNG wand fight, said Katsuki. She pointed her wand at Achiko and caused an explosion next to her, causing the other girl to jump. However, this did distraction her enough to free the two from the anti-gravity. Katsuki managed to land on her feet, but Ida fell hard. Katsuki looked around a bit and couldn't see where Izuku was before turning her attention to Achiko. Damn it, Deku. Where you are you? Muttered Katsuki. Ida was keeping an eye out for Izuku. However, Achiko noticed this and pointed her wand at him. This, however, his gravity increased and he forced to the ground. However, Katsuki once again pointed her wand near Achiko, which of course distracted her. The power that Midoriya gave you is impressive, but it cannot defat our evil plans, taunted Ida, still in character. Both Katsuki and Achiko took a quick break to stare him. Katsuki decided to create her own character in response. I barely know this a-hole and just wanted to work with him because of his resources, muttered Katsuki. Seriously, yelled Ida. Achiko couldn't help but to giggle. However, Katsuki took advantage of this momentary distraction, create more explosions. Achiko dodged by turning off her own gravity and landed on the other side of the room, but nowhere nearby the bomb. You fool! You're even farther away from the bomb than before, mocked Ida. You idiot, didn't you forget she's the distraction? Yelled Katsuki. Even though he was wearing a helmet, Katsuki would tell he was gritting his teeth. Achiko got ready for another attack, however something else happened. Okay, said Izuku's voice some quietly into her earpiece. He was in position. Achiko caused her wand to disappear. Release, she said, putting her fingers together. What? Asked Katsuki and Ida at the same time. Hero team wins, called out All Might. The two villains turned towards the bomb and they saw that Izuku, still in animal form, was on top of it. And Katsuki put 2 and 2 together. He had her use her quirk on him to float around while she distracted them. Of FING course, muttered Katsuki, you took advantage of the fact I would be looking for the ground. Izuku nodded as he let go on the bomb and dropped down to the floor. He then promptly vomited up a rainbow. Midoriya, yelled Ida in shock. How long was it under your quirk? Asked Katsuki. Since we've been in the building, said Achiko. It was my idea, said Izuku once his stomach was empty. Should we be concerned that his vomit looks like that? Said Ida. No, it's fine, said Katsuki. Well, it's a side effect of my quirk, said Achiko, blushing a little. Both Katsuki and Izuku looked at Achiko. Okay, what are the chances of that? Said Katsuki. I don't know, sighed Izuku. Wait, you mean you normally vomit up rainbows? Asked Achiko in shock. Yeah, said Izuku, blushing. Please return to the viewing room for your grading, called out All Might. They got back to the viewing room where All Might was giving them their grade. Now to announce the MVP of the match. Young Midoriya, said All Might. Really? Said Izuku, who had gone back to human form for his grade, and of course his tail was wagging. Now can any of you explain why? Asked All Might. Yaoyorozu held up her hand. It was because of his plan. Midoriya came up with a plan that ensured victory. While Uraraka played her part as a distraction, she ironically got distracted. Bakugo and Ida, while doing their best to work together, did fall for the distraction, but at the same time they weren't expecting Midoriya to drop from the ceiling and expected him to come from somewhere on the floor. Said Yaoyorozu. All Might wasn't sure how to respond to it. Well, I wouldn't use that many words, but I would also point out that Midoriya could have had less time under Uraraka's quirk to prevent the side effect. Said All Might. Izuku laughed nervously as this. All right, on to the next match, said All Might. Izuku watched remaining matches with interest, watching to see how his classmates uses their quirks. Though the biggest surprise was during Todoroki's fight, where he was one of the heroes. The other was Shoji, and they went up against Ojiro and Hagakure. Shoji didn't do anything, as Todoroki just froze the entire building, stopping his opponents cold, pun partially intended, and touched the bomb like it was nothing. Holy shit, yelled Katsuki when she saw that. He's so strong, said Izuku in surprise. But other than that, he did pay some attention to the girls of his class. After all, he was supposed partner up with one of them. But eventually all the matches were done. All right, all of you did a fantastic job, said All Might, and none of the injuries were that bad. What about Hagakure? Asked Izuku. Well, her injuries weren't that bad, said All Might. It should be noted in her match she took off her shoes and gloves. So yeah, she was completely naked during the match. Now I'm sure all of you have learned lessons in your fights, said All Might. Now, I will show you how Pro Hero leaves. He ran off very quickly. Oh wow, he's so manly, called out Kirishima. That's weird, said Izuku. What do you mean? Asked Katsuki. The way he left, it was like he was in a hurry, said Izuku. Probably all in your head, said Katsuki. After getting changed, they all went back to the class. However, it seemed like a good chunk of the class wanted to hang back for a bit and talk about their fights. By the way, Midori, your fight was awesome, said Ishido. Really? Said Izuku, blushing a little. Yeah. Your plan was so crazy, said Zero. You just dropped from the ceiling like nothing, said Ishido. I played hide and seek a lot with Kaken, said Izuku. Katsuki could tell that this wasn't something she didn't need to defend him from and joined the conversation. The idiot decided that doing that in his animal form would be a great way to train in stealth. Said Katsuki. Did you just call him an idiot even if the idea was smart? Said Kirishima with a sweat drop. You want to make something of it, shitty hair? Demanded Katsuki. Kaken, cried Izuku. Izuku looked at his classmates. It feels weird. Thought Izuku activating the telepathy. What does? Asked Katsuki. Being accepted like this, thought Izuku. You still haven't explained everything about your quirk. Pointed out Katsuki. Wait until everything is out. Izuku sighed but still smiled nonetheless. Even if it does come crashing down when everything came out about his quirk. For now he wasn't an outcast. Also the fact that he was something of a stealth expert in animal form helped a good deal. So that was good. Next time, it's time to choose the class representative. Who will be elected and will the person think they will do a good enough job? Also Katsuki decides to let Ida on the whole truth thanks to the election, and not only that but there's a field trip. What could go wrong with that? Find out next time. Chapter 5. Election time and field trip gone wrong. Achiko, Katsuki and Izuku were walking to school together, or rather Izuku was riding Katsuki's shoulder. But still the three of them were together. Then they saw the horrifying sight of the press gathered outside. What's the press doing here? Asked Katsuki. I don't know, said Izuku. That was when Katsuki grabbed Izuku from her shoulder. Kaken? Asked Izuku. Then Katsuki prodded to stuff her best friend into her backpack. Kaken, why are you doing this? Cried Izuku. Because you don't have enough of a spine to deal with the press yet, said Katsuki. Achiko just sweat dropped at this sight. And so they headed inside with the press demanding to know about All Might. Well, he's all muckly, said Achiko answering the questions. Get the F away from me, muttered Katsuki making her way through. Once Katsuki was in class, she put her backpack on Izuku's desk and let him out. Really, Kaken? Yelled Izuku once he was free. Look, we both know you would just freeze up with the press, said Katsuki. You need to grow a spine, but dealing with the press isn't the best way to do that. You could have done something else and not stuff me into your backpack, cried Izuku. It either that or toss you over the fence, said Katsuki. Izuku stared at his best friend. Seriously, Kaken? Sighed Izuku. Wait, why didn't you let me switch out my shoes? Katsuki's sweat dropped. Wait, do I have time? Aced Izuku. I don't think you'll have time, said Achiko. Izuku sighed at this. I doubt anyone will notice, said Katsuki. Kaken, everyone will notice my shoes, sighed Izuku. Katsuki just shrugged. Soon enough class had begun. I have seen all of yesterday's matches, there's not much for me to say, muttered Aizawa. That might be, but there is something you must do that affect your future. The entire class was nervous when he said that. You must pick a class representative, said Aizawa. Normal school stuff, the class yelled out in surprise. Before most of the class wanting to become class representative. After all, it was a title that many hero agencies would notice and great way to prove leadership skills. It was a madhouse. Hold on, yelled Ida. This isn't a position that should be given away lightly. The best way to choose is to hold election. Wait, if we do that, won't everyone vote for themselves? Asked Kirishima. He's right, none of know each other well, said Azui. Speak for yourself, muttered Katsuki. But whoever gets more than one vote means that they have already earned the trust of other students, said Ida, and thus proving they have what it takes to represent our class. What do you think, Aizawa? Asked Yaoyorozu. Just whatever, muttered Aizawa. Just don't take all day. Izuku looked at Ida and knew what he had to do. And soon enough everyone voted. However, it did not go the way Izuku expected at all. 2 students got more than 1 vote. Yaoyorozu, who managed to get 2 votes for herself. And the other was Izuku. How did I get 3 votes? Thought Izuku. At the same time Ida was lamenting something. I only got a single vote? Asked Ida. Hey, come on, at least your vote got counted, Sato said, reassuring him. Ida didn't say something as the class realized something. He didn't vote for himself. Seriously, Deku? Asked Katsuki, turning around to look at Izuku. Izuku sighed. And so he, in human form, and Yaoyorozu stood in front of the class. Now these are the ones you picked. Do you have any complaints? Asked Aizawa. Is Midoriya wearing his outdoor shoes? Asked Jiro. Izuku sighed. It's not my fault, sighed Izuku. Kaken stuffed me into her backpack so I wouldn't have to deal with the press and only let me out when we got to class, and I didn't have time to go back to the lockers and switch out my shoes. Everyone stared at Izuku. That only makes sense because you're the one saying it, said Jiro. Izuku laughed nervously at that. He really didn't think he's up to the task. During lunch, of course, he was eating with his friends. This time he sat on Achiko's lap. I can't believe the cafeteria is so crowded, said Achiko. The other core students are also eating here, said Izuku, so it makes sense. He then sighed. Come on Deku, it's not that bad, said Katsuki. But I don't know if I do a good job, cried Izuku. I mean, what if I screw up? What if I? This is why I voted for you, muttered Katsuki. You need to gain a backbone. If you don't get one, then how are you going to get 2 more partners? Izuku pouted somewhat. I believe you can do it, Midoriya, said Ida. That's why I voted for you. But didn't you want the job yourself? Asked Izuku. Wanting it and being qualified are 2 different things, said Ida. But you do have the look for it, said Achiko. What with the glasses and all? That's not how you should judge a class representative, thought Izuku with a sweat drop. That might be, said Ida, sounding like he agreed with Izuku's thought, but I believe you the better candidate and I humbly give the job to you. Humbly? Asked Achiko. Ida, are you rich? Ida began to blush a little. Well, I don't like tell people about this, said Ida, but I come from the Ida family, a family that had been heroes for many years. Have you heard of Ingenium? Oh yeah, he's the turbo hero. He has an agency in Tokyo and has 65 sidekicks, said Izuku with his tail wagging. He's my older brother, said Ida. Really? Asked Izuku with his tail wagging even more. Cool, said Achiko. Katsuki just nodded. He is someone who is very admirable in both heroics and leadership skills. And one day I hope to achieve the skills that he has, said Ida, smile. The 3 looked at Ida surprised. What? Asked Ida. This is the first time I've seen you smile, said Achiko. I smile, said Ida. Katsuki gave Izuku a certain hand signal. It was a signal for Izuku to turn on his telepathy. Hey, Katsuki told him. I think we should tell him. Really? Replied Izuku, surprised. Wait, you don't mean? Thought Achiko. What's going on? Asked Inko. We're going to tell him about the side effects, explained Katsuki. Inko remembering hearing about Ida knowing it was him. However, before any more could be said, alarm sounded and a voice informing them, a level 3 intruder alert. Please remain calm and evacuate. What's a level 3 intruder alert? Asked Achiko to some older students nearby. It means someone got into the school. It hasn't happened in my time here, said the person she asked. But of course everyone started to freak out as they tried to evacuate. Achiko held onto Izuku as tightly as they could as the hallway was jammed-packed with everyone trying to flee. During the madness, Ida got pushed into the window and saw what was really going on. The press had broken in. He tried to calm everyone down. But no one listened. He got a plan down. He asked Achiko to cancel out his gravity and he propelled himself to spot and ended up looking like the little guy on the emergency exit and calmed everyone down. This also made Izuku realize something, as well as something he wanted. After everything calmed down, and Izuku got the chance to finally change out his shoes, they called Izuku and Yaoyorozu for class business. Now I guess we should determine the other class positions, said Aizawa. Wait, before we get started I want to say something, said Izuku. After what happened I think that Ida should be class representative. The class was surprised. Seriously, Deku? Asked Katsuki. After what just happened he showed us what he can do, and true leadership skills, said Izuku. He's got a point, said Kirishima. Yeah, Eminency exit did calm everyone down, agreed Siro. It should be pointed out that Pose did earn Ida the nickname Emergency Exit. Whatever, muttered Aizawa, who was clearly done with everything. I was the one who got more votes than him, thought Yaoyorozu with a sigh. And with that Izuku was able to give up his position as class representative. However, the day wasn't over. Afterward, while walking to the train station, listen, emergency exit, muttered Katsuki. Ida froze. You really seem like you want to be Izuku's friend, said Katsuki. Ida was even more surprised. Did you just say? Said Ida. Ida, sighed Izuku, if you're serious about being my friend, we think we should tell you about my quirk side effect. Oh, I see, said Ida, remembering how they were defensive about keeping it private the other day. Just a word of warning. If you want nothing to do with us, I will make your life a living hell any time we have to deal with each other. Ida just nodded, remembering how protective Katsuki was towards Izuku. All right, sighed Izuku. He told him the side effect of his quirk if he bonded with a male and how he knew about. He looked at both Katsuki and Izuku. I see, said Ida, that actually explains quite a bit. Izuku and Katsuki both looked at him, as did Achiko, who was silent during this. You can't control what your quirk does, said Ida. Really? Asked Izuku, who looked to be on the verge of crying. Ida nodded. It's terrible that you had to go through all that. Izuku started crying so much that his tears were like a waterfall. Thank you so much, cried Izuku. Is this another side effect of his quirk? Asked Ida. No. Auntie is like this too, said Katsuki, removing Izuku from her shoulder to avoid getting soaked. Well, even more soaked. With that many tears, she was already pretty soaked. Good to know you're an actual friend, said Katsuki with a genuine smile. What do you mean? Asked Ida. Everyone in our school wanted to be a hero, yet none of them really practiced what they preached, said Katsuki. They talked about how they were planning to go to a hero school, completely unaware of how they really were. You really want to be a hero. You've been through a lot, haven't you? Asked Ida. Both Izuku and Katsuki were quiet, well, except for Izuku sobs. It's clear none of them were really trying to be hero. Ida. I hate to ruin the moment, but we really should go to the train station, said Achiko. You're quite right, said Ida. Come on, Deku, you have to stop crying, said Katsuki. I know, cried Izuku. They counted to the train station, happy that Ida was a true friend and accepted them despite everything. The next day it was a normal school day, thankfully without any problems during lunch. But it was after lunch that was the most interesting. All right, today's class will be different. We're going to perform rescue training. From floods to fires, you're going to learn what it's like to rescue people, said Aizawa. The class was excited. It will also be held off-site, so we will be taking a bus there, said Aizawa. All Might will meet us there along with another hero. He then hit the switch for their costumes. You may wear your costumes, but remember they might not be suited for rescue work, so remember that when getting ready, said Aizawa. And so the class met up outside the buses. Everyone but Achiko and Katsuki wearing their costumes. The two wearing their gym clothes. Though many of them weren't wearing their entire costumes, as Izuku wasn't wearing his visor or gloves. All right, everyone, called out Ida, taking charge. Line up according to class number and step aboard the bus. He's really getting into his role as class representative, said Achiko. I think you made a mistake in giving it to him, muttered Katsuki. Izuku laughed at this. However, during the bus ride, Ida was lamenting that the bus screwed up his plans for boarding, as it was an open layout. I tend to speak my mind a lot, and I was wondering something, said Azui. What is it, Azui? Asked Izuku, who was in animal form during the bus ride. You can call me Tsu, said Azui, or rather Tsu, and your quirk doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense unless you know all about it, laughed Izuku. So how does it work? Asked Kirishima. Well, it's called Magical Girl Mascot, said Izuku. I knew it, yelled Hagakure somewhere on the bus. You see, it allows me create bonds with people, said Izuku. They get a special costume, a power boost while in the costume, and other abilities while in human form. I get a copy of their quirk without the power boost I give them. We also gain a telepathic bond, but it's not all the time, and I'm the only one who can turn it on. Wait, did you give them those wands? Asked Kaminari. Izuku nodded. So wait, is just with girls, or can anyone bond with you? Aside Kirishima, I mean, you said people. There's a side effect if I bond with someone that's male, said Izuku. Really, what is it? Asked Tsuyu. I'll explain another time, said Izuku. Midoriya had a history of bullying because of that side effect, said Ida, so please don't press him. Wait, you told emergency exit? Asked Kaminari. He earned mine and Deku's trust, muttered Katsuki, and the rest of you haven't done the same, so don't. Else was left unsaid. Also, another thing I get is an added 2 hours as a human if I bond with someone, said Izuku. I only have 6 hours for now, which is why I limit my time. Wait, are you looking for more people to bond with? Asked Yaoyorozu. Izuku nodded, but I'm not going to make any bond with me unless they want to, or it's an emergency and there's no other choice, said Izuku. What kind of emergency? Asked Kirishima. Well, I bonded with him during the exam, said Achiko. Oh yes, I remember that. You were almost crushed by the 0-pointer, said Aoyama. I remember the sparkle you created when it happened. She was pinned by debris and neither my mom's or Kaken's quirks would have gotten her free, said Izuku. Wait, you bonded with your mom? Asked Kaminari. I didn't mean to on my end and my mom decided to because of reasons, said Izuku. What do you mean you didn't mean to? Asked Tsuyu. After I bonded with Kaken, I started to try to initiate bonds randomly. I could barely control it. No one but my mom took it thought, said Izuku. It took me months to control it. Don't make it creepy, Pikachu, muttered Katsuki, glaring at Kaminari. Even Achiko was glaring at Kaminari. I need to make 2 more bonds by the end of the year, sighed Izuku, but like I said, I won't make anyone do it, so don't worry. Izuku sighed. Okay, so his classmates now knew that he was looking for partners and he had a reason for not taking boys, even if they didn't know that reason. They soon got to their location, which was a large domed building that looked like something like a theme park. Oh wow, it's like Universal Studios, said Ishido. Welcome, said the hero teacher who was dressed like an astronaut, and welcome to a facility I built. Oh wow, it's 13, said Achiko, really excited. They're my favorite hero. I know. A rescue hero, said Izuku, who had returned to his human form as his tail waged profusely. Wasn't All Might was supposed to hear? Asked Aizawa. Unforgeable, he got up in something, said 13, holding up 3 fingers. The hero then turned to the students. Now this is a faculty I built called the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ for short, said 13. It really Universal Studios Japan, thought all of the students. Now before I get started, I want to make a point, or rather 2, maybe 3, no wait 4, definitely 4, said 13. The students all sweat dropped. Now you will be here to learn rescue training, said 13, and all of you have quirks. But there is a dangerous side to your quirks. Take for instance my quirk Black Hole. It sees up everything and turns it to dust. You've used that quirk in many rescue missions, said Izuku. Yes, but it also can easily be used to kill, said 13. Many of your quirks can be used for good, but remember they are often dangerous. You have learned how to use your quirks to fight. But today you will learn how to use your quirk to save people. After all, your powers aren't meant to inflict harm. Thank you all for listening. The class applauded, with Ida being the loudest. But before class could begin, the lights suddenly went out. Then they noticed in a central plaza a strange black and purple thing appeared, which then got bigger. The students all saw this. Are those robots? Asked Kirishima. No, stand back. Those are real villains, said Aizawa. The students were shocked. Aren't there supposed to intruder alarms? Asked Yaoyorozu. They're supposed to go off, said 13, but I don't understand why. This is clearly an organized attack, said Todoroki. They're not a bunch of idiots, they knew they would be here. They picked a place far away from the main campus at a time where there would be few people. There's something blocking our communications with some kind of electrical quirk, said Aizawa. Kaminari, try to get into contact with the school. Okay, said Kaminari. Wait, I can get in contact with my mom, said Izuku. She can call the school. He activated his telepathy. Mom, can you hear us? Thought Izuku. Yeah, replied Inko. You need to get in contact with the school now. We're at a place called the USJ. They're blocking the communications. We can't get in contact with the school. Explained Izuku. It's true. There's a lot of villains here. Added Ochako. I'll call them right away. Keep this open, please Izuku. Replied Inko. Don't worry, I doubt Deku would do anything stupid and cut it off. Responded Katsuki. Evacuate them, said Aizawa. I'll handle them. Wait, your quirk isn't good with large crowds. Said Izuku. Your quirk is suited for one-on-one fights and binding. No good hero is a one-trick pony. Said Aizawa. 13. And with that Aizawa jumped right into a large crowd of villains. Izuku watched as their teacher held his own. Midoriya, now's not the time, watch, scolded Ida. Oh right, said Izuku. They all began to excavate, but before they could leave the building the black and purple mass blocked their path. It was a villain that was amorphous cloud. Greetings, we are the League of Villains, said the amorphous cloud. Forgive our audacity, but we are here for one reason, to kill the symbol of peace. Everyone looked at the amorphous cloud in shock. He was supposed to be here, but he isn't here, said the amorphous cloud. But no matter. I still have a role to play. That was when Katsuki transformed and went in to attack the amorphous cloud, being joined by Kirishima. Kaken, thought Izuku. What did she do? Asked Inko. You probably don't want to know, sighed Ochako. Bet you didn't expect that, taunted Kirishima. But I noticed that it didn't seem to work. Get back, yelled 13. But it was too late. The entire area was covered by the amorphous cloud's power, engulfing all of the students and spreading most of them through the US, where other villains were waiting for them, and hopefully they would be able to get out of this. Chapter 6. Leapfrog. Everything was black for Izuku, then suddenly he appeared midair with water below him. He fell into the water. That was when he saw a shark man swimming towards him. Oh no, he mentally cried out. Izuku, what's wrong? Called out Inko. Before he could answer, a figure swam in and kicked the shark man like it was nothing. Had Izuku been able to breathe, he would breathe a sigh of relief, as the person who saved him was Tsuyu. She grabbed him with her lunge and she swam to the surface. She placed him on a boat before slamming Mineta into the deck hard, and she climbed onto the deck. Thank you, Azui, said Izuku. I told you to call me Tsu. Izuku nodded. Hey, can you hold on a second? Said Izuku. Tsuyu and Mineta looked at each other. Then Tsuyu remembered he mentioned telepathy. What happened? Asked Inko. It was a work quirk, and I think we got scattered throughout the USJ. Thought Izuku. Oh no, thought Inko. You guys all right? He thought. I'm fine, replied Ochako. Ida actually grabbed and ran out of the area with me and Sato, so I'm still at the entrance. Shoji also saved Mina and Siro. 13 is also with Hiras. I'm with shitty hair in an area with collapsed buildings, explained Katsuki. Which one's shitty hair? Asked Ochako. Guy with shark teeth, red hair, muttered Katsuki. Oh, Kirishima, re-lazied Ochako. Are you with someone, Deku? Asked Katsuki. Yeah, replied Izuku. I'm with 2 others. Good, because we all know what you have to do, responded Katsuki. Izuku looked over the side of the ship and saw a lot of villains. There was no other choice. He needed to bond with someone. Who are you with? Asked Ochako. I'm with Mineta, explained Izuku. Bond with him, growled Katsuki. Kaken, cried Izuku. If any in class deserves to get hit with the side effect, it's that perv, yelled Katsuki. So bond with him. I don't think that's a good idea, pointed out Ochako. Why the if not? Replied Katsuki. Because if he bonds with Deku, then we'll hear his thoughts whenever he opens up telepathy, said Ochako. DMN you and your logic, muttered Katsuki. You mentioned someone else is with you, right? Asked Inko. Yes, Azui, explained Izuku. Wait, you're with a girl? And you brought up Grapist first. What these do? Metnally muttered Katsuki. Ask Azui, said Ochako. And if she says no, convince him and don't tell him about the side effect. Thogot Katsuki. Izuku sighed. Tsu, sighed Izuku, but added mentally, that's weird to say. What? Asked Inko. Sorry, thought Izuku. What is it? Asked Tsuyu. I don't know if you want to do this. I mean, if you say yes, you'll be stuck for the rest of your life or my life, even if it's just mentally and… said Izuku. You think we should bond? Said Tsuyu. Izuku nodded. I don't know how long it will be until the pros come, said Izuku. Even if my mom is calling the school, we need as much power as we can get. I'll do it, said Tsuyu. Really? Asked Izuku. Tsuyu nodded. Admittingly, she wasn't that interested in doing this. However, if it gave her a power boost while they were surrounded by villains and give her classmate a copy of her quirk in an area where water was everywhere, then she'll go along with it. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Okay, said Izuku. He turned into his animal form. Wait, I can only make bonds in my animal form, said Izuku. Also, I can only use my copied quirks in human form. Tsuyu nodded. Izuku created a light from the gem on his forehead. It moved to Tsuyu. Grab it, said Izuku. Tsuyu nodded and she grabbed the light. When she did, a dark green light surrounded her, and she felt a warmth surrounded her body. In that light, her outfit changed, while the top remained somewhat the same. Green with black and yellow stripes. Her boots, which resembled frogs' feet, were also pretty much the same but now knee-high instead of thigh-high. Her gloves were the one thing that was the same. Everything else was different. Instead of long selves, they were now short and resembled petal of a water lily. She also had a skirt that resembled a lily pad. In her hair was a water lily-shaped decoration, and in her hair were spring green streaks. The dark green gem was a part of her water lily hair decoration. Also, the gem on Izuku's forehead was now joined by a dark green shimmer along with the 3 other colors. Really? Asked Tsuyu. I have no control over what the outfits look like, said Izuku as he turned back human. I think you look much better in your new costume, said Mineta, given the thumb up. She began to whack him with her tongue multiple times with such precision. I get what you mean by getting stronger, said Tsuyu. My tongue is much faster. Izuku just nodded with a sweat drop. I'm on hold as someone is getting Principal Nizu. Inko's voice called out to the telepathic message. What? Said Tsuyu. Telepathic bond, remember? Thought Izuku. Oh right, thought Tsuyu. I should be able to talk to him in a minute, thought Inko, hopefully. Back at school, the principal named Nizu was talking with the teacher while making tea. Oh no, when tea's involved he won't stop talking, thought the teacher. However, before anything could be said, the Diamanterex teacher ran in. Nizu, Mrs. Midoriya is on the phone, she explained. She says that something is happening at the USJ and it's an emergency. Principal Nizu froze when she said that. He knew that she was connected to her son and his partner's telepathy. The teacher paled and then ran out of the room as quickly as he can. Remember, Mrs. Midoriya has a telepathic bond with her son, and she's calling now. Then that means the class is in danger, said Nizu. The DMNTRX teacher nodded. At the entrance of the USJ, 13 breathed a sigh of relief as Ochako had relayed her the information that she got. 11 students are accounted, 13 said. The 6 with them and the other. But I'm on the phone now with Principal Nizu now, Inko called out with the telepathy. Really? Asked Ochako. About time, called out Katsuki. All Might has already left and heading towards the school now, explained Inko. All Might's coming, said Ochako in a quiet tone so that amorphous cloud wouldn't hear. 13 nodded, however they were worried for some reason. 13, what's wrong? Asked Ida. It's nothing, said 13, but you need to stand back. He can still scatter you. Are you sure? Asked Sato. 13 nodded. Hey Deku, are you having an easy time too? Asked Katsuki. Back in the boat with Izuku, Tsuyu and Mineta. No, we're trying to strategize, thought Izuku. Seriously? Unless you're in the fire area with a ton of fire quirks, I don't see what the problem is, muttered Katsuki. We're in the flood zone with a bunch of villains with water-based quirks, explained Tsuyu. Oh, muttered Katsuki. Wait, you're in the flood zone? Asked Inko. We're in a boat, explained Tsuyu. Okay, responded Inko. That was when it suddenly hit Izuku. I don't think they know about our quirks, said Izuku. What? Asked Mineta. You're right, said Tsuyu. If they knew I was a frog that they would have sent me to the fire area. Izuku nodded. They would have sent me completely alone so I wouldn't be able to make any new bonds, said Izuku. How does your quirk work? Well, I can do anything a frog can do. I have a long tongue, I can jump really high, cling to walls, swim really fast, I have a toxic mucus but it only stings and some stuff with my stomach that I don't really want to talk about. Satsuyu. Well, I have all that now, along with Ochiko's quirk which let me cancel out the gravity if I touch something with pads on my fingers when I activate it. I have Kaken's which gives me explosive sweat from my palms and my mom's which a very minor telekinesis quirk that lets me pull small objects. Explained Izuku. The two looked at Mineta. What are you seriously considering fighting? Asked Mineta. Even if All Might is coming, said Tsuyu, we probably won't be the first one he rescues. Mineta sighed as he took off one of his hair ball off his head. I can take them off and whatever I stick to them stick right there, said Mineta. Both of them stared at him. How did he pass the entrance exam? Thought Tsuyu. Maybe rescue points? Thought Izuku. Both of them heard a snort from Katsuki. It's rude that you're leaving me out, cried Mineta. And why do we have to fight back? You said yourself All Might is coming. He should be here soon and save everyone. Are you sure you should be going to UA? Asked Tsuyu. We're a bunch of teenagers going up against actual villains, cried Mineta. Of course I'm scared. We're going to get out of here, said Izuku looking right at him. Everything's going to be fine. That was when one of the villain attacked the boat they were on. You just jinxed us, yelled Mineta. I told Nizu everything I could. Don't worry, the rest of the teachers coming. Assured Inko thought she didn't know about the ship. The teachers are coming, said Izuku. What good is All Might and the teachers coming if they don't show up in time, cried Mineta. We barely have any time for this. We're going to do too. He counted to cry and cry about how they were all going to die. You know, I have a theory. What? Sked Izuku. You said that my quirk is more powerful. Izuku nodded. With Kaken she explode any part of her body. Ochiko doesn't need to touch things to turn off their gravity and my mom's telekinesis is much more powerful. Explained Izuku. Then that means all of my abilities have been enhanced. Izuku nodded. Tsuyu slapped Mineta multiple times with her tongue to calm him down. I have an idea to get us out of here. What can get us out of here? Cried Mineta. She grabbed him with her tongue. She looked at Izuku who knew what to do. He turned into animal form. She held onto her stuffed animal like classmate and she jumped. The villains saw her jump and saw that she seemed to be out of range for their attacks. Seriously, yelled one of them, they just run. That's so anticlimactic. A villain with a skull mask sighed. We'll get them later, he told the others. Meanwhile they made completely to dry land. That had to twice as far as I normally jump, admitted Tsuyu as she slammed Mineta to the ground. She let go of Izuku who turned back to his human form. They turned to the central plaza where Aizawa was still fighting many of the villains. It will be hard to get to the entrance from here with the fight going on there, said Izuku. Tsuyu nodded. What are we going to do? Thought Izuku. I don't know, but the fact you're thinking it means you want the others' help. Thought Tsuyu. I'm busy kicking these fuckers' butts so don't ask me. Thought Katsuki, and I bet you two did the same. Totally, replied Izuku. You ran. Thought Katsuki. We ran, sighed Izuku. The boat we were on was sinking and it was the only way, pointed out Tsuyu. Besides the power boosted my jumping. Oh, did you try your wand yet? Asked Ochiko. Now's not a good time to try the wand, pointed out Inko, unless she has to use it. She's right, agreed Izuku. At the entrance, 13 had started to SCK the amorphous cloud using their quirk. The amorphous cloud had a plan to take care of 13. However, suddenly the doors opened up, and a certain very muscular figure had come through the doors. It was All Might. Even from their spot, Izuku, Tsuyu and Mineta saw this. You have nothing to worry about, said All Might looking said, because I am here. All Might's here, called out Ochiko. Yeah, called out Katsuki. Thank goodness. Inko breathing a sigh of relief. Although he was somewhat far away, Izuku could see All Might's face. He's not smiling, said Izuku. What? Asked Mineta. When I was little, I always noticed something about All Might. Whenever he saved someone, he did it with a smile. That's one of the reasons why I admired him so much, because he could reassure everyone with a smile that it would be all right, said Izuku. But he's not smiling. He's angry. Mineta nodded. The amorphous cloud looked at All Might. So you actually made it, said the amorphous cloud. In the main plaza, man with light blue hair covered in hands. He smiled under the hand over his face. So, All Might is here, he said. He looked towards what could only be described as a monster. So looks like he was just a little late, said the man, but still it means that our plan will come to fruition. The man who was clearly the leader had a plan to take of All Might. Because that monster wasn't just someone with a quirk that made him like, but rather something else. Something that go toe-to-toe with the world's strongest hero. And things were about to get more complicated from there. Next time, with All Might's arrival thing, it looks like it might turn out for the better. Or rather, it appeared that way. With the monster that the League has. Not to mention, it was probably not a good idea to just run away from all those villains. What will happen? Find out next time. Chapter 7. Shouldn't have run. All Might was angry. He looked at the way that 13 was protecting the 6 students that managed to avoid getting scattered. All Might glared at the amorphous cloud. So I guess you were just running a bit late, said the amorphous cloud. You could say that, muttered All Might. He did look at Achiko from the corner of his eye. Achiko noticed the way he seemed to be looking at her. She nodded as if saying it was true, that she was still in contact with the other partners. Why are you attacking my students? Demanded All Might. Our goal is quite simple. To kill you, said the amorphous cloud. Many people have tried to kill me over the years, yet none have, said All Might. Oh, we have a plan, said the amorphous cloud. Then the amorphous cloud warped away. All Might scowled. Young Uraraka, said All Might, how are your classmates? We only know about Deku, Kaken, Tsu, Kirishima and Mineta. And right now they're all fine, said Achiko. But Deku did have to make a bond with Tsu? I see, said All Might, who seemed a mix of worry and relieved. The teachers were all informed about the side effect of Izuku's quirk should he bond with a male. So the fact he had to make a bond with someone was to be somewhat expected, but was relieved that he was bonded with a female classmates was a relief. All Might nodded and then leapt to where Aizawa was fighting with the villains. Meanwhile, in the collapse zone, Katsuki and Kirishima had almost decimated all of the villains. Katsuki managed to give an explosive kick to one villain, while Kirishima managed to punch a few of them out. You know, for a magical girl you're pretty manly, said Kirishima. What thief does that mean? Asked Katsuki, glaring at him harshly. It was a compliment, said Kirishima. Whatever, said Katsuki. They looked around. So you think we're done here? Asked Kirishima. Before Katsuki could answer, she let loose an explode elbow jab at a chameleon-like villain that tried to attack her. Now we are, muttered Katsuki. She then sent out a message. Hey, I'm all done here. Like I said, these villains were weak, explained Katsuki. You should head to the entrance. Though Izuku. You heading there? Asked Katsuki. No, sighed Izuku. Mr. Aizawa's fight is blocking us and we have to figure out a way around it, explained Tsuyu. All Might's here, so we might be able to get past soon, explained Izuku. Katsuki nodded. Come on, shitty hair, let's get out of here, said Katsuki. Okay, said Kirishima. In Central Plaza, Aizawa was starting to have a hard time. His quirk let him erase the quirks of other people by looking at them. However, there are multiple drawbacks. One was it gave him dry eye. The other was that it would be cancelled if he blinked, and the longer he used it, the more often he would have to blink. Needless to say, the longer the battle went on, for the harder it was. That was when All Might swooped in, however, and with a mighty punch blew all of the villains away. When All Might landed, Aizawa looking at his fellow teacher. You know, we could have avoided this if you didn't waste your time limit, said Aizawa. All Might sighed at that. At least young Midoriya was able to get the word out. Said All Might. Aizawa nodded. Both turned to the blue-haired man and the monster. So it looks like All Might has shown up after all. Said the hand-covered man. Time to unleash the final boss. What? Asked All Might. Go Nomu, said the hand-covered man. That was when the large monster ran towards All Might and tackled him. From their area, Izuku, Tsu and Mineta all saw this. What is that? Asked Mineta. I have no idea, said Izuku. They watched as the monster punched All Might, which All Might was able to take. However, he punched right back. But the punch didn't even faze the monster. Did that thing take All Might punch? Yelled Mineta. It did, said Izuku in shock. Rip it, croaked Tsuyu in shock. However, before they could react, the water behind them bubbled up. And suddenly the water engulfed them. Meanwhile, Katsuki and Kirishima had left the collapse zone entirely. However, both of them saw the huge wave engulfing the area. Deku. Frog face, thought Katsuki. Turned out it was a bad idea avoiding them. Izuku voice popped up. Of course that's what happened, thought Katsuki with her eye twitching. You need help. Neither one answered. Of course, muttered Katsuki. She looked at Kirishima. Get on my back, said Katsuki. What? Asked Kirishima. I said get on my bucking back, yelled Katsuki. We have to rescue two of my partners. Kirishima just nodded. In the water. Izuku knew he had to use his newest quirk and activate it. It felt weird havening his body shift in multiple ways, such as his legs and arms, but even his tongue. He also could feel that while it was a mutation quirk, his version was more of a transformation and not permanent. But still, even if it was a transformation, it was best suited for this environment. Though the problem was that, well, it was all new to him. He tried his best to swim over to one villain and tried to kick him, but the kick was too difficult. Thankfully, Tsu swam in quickly and kicked the villain away. She was also holding on Mineta, who was trying his best to hold his breath. Any advice? Thought Izuku. Maybe relax a bit, thought Tsu. Izuku, please tell me you're not trying to use a new quirk without practice. Inko added. I'm sorry, Mom, but we're kind of in a situation, thought Izuku. We need to get to shore, thought Tsu. I know, thought Izuku. They both swam as they could back to shore. Once they were on dry ground. Finally, yelled Mineta, taking a breath. They both tried to get away as fast they could from the shore. However, they couldn't get away far enough, because the villain with the skull-like mask had created a wall of water that locked them from escaping. You really can't get away from us, mocked the villain with the skull-like mask. That was when they heard a massive explosion coming from the entrance area of the collapse zone. Everyone throughout the USJ heard that explosion. Kaken, what are you doing? Thought Ochako. You know the answer to that, replied Katsuki. She was midair soaring thanks to her prelusion. Kirishima was holding on as tightly as he could. She then summoned her wand. All right, time for my strongest explosion, said Katsuki. She pointed her wand at the water, and soon enough a very large explosion hit the water, causing half of the water to rain all over the USJ. Not only that, but many of the villains were also launched into the air because of that. Almost every fight had stopped for a few seconds to see what just happened. With the hand-covered violin, he watched in shock. Kurogiri, was that one of the students? Asked the hand-covered villain. I believe so, said the amorphous cloud now known at Kurogiri. What kind of students are they teaching? Growled out the hand-covered. Meanwhile, Aizawa saw what happened and realized he had to go over there. Go to them, said All Might, still grappling with the monster. I was about to, muttered Aizawa. He pinched the bridge of his nose. This day was just back with Izuku, Tsu and Mineta. Katsuki and Kirishima landed after Katsuki let loose an explosion to soften her landing. Kaken, seriously, cried Izuku. I should say the same thing to you, said Katsuki. Yeah, but using a new quirk won't exhaust me like that explosion, sighed Izuku. Katsuki was about to say something but then looked at Izuku as if judging him. Whatever, you look iffy weird but the way, said Katsuki. Tsu glared at Katsuki. I mean because of the combination of his ears and tail, said Katsuki. It should be noted that Izuku still had his rabbit ears and dog tail while using Tsuyu's quirk, meaning he was now part frog, part rabbit, and part dog. You do have a point, Ribbit, said Tsuyu. Why? Cried Izuku. Hey guys, said Kirishima. They turned to the flood zone that was refilling with water. F dash, yelled Katsuki. Look like you didn't get everyone, said Tsuyu. Can't you just do what you did again? Asked Mineta. No. I can only do that attack once again. I'll exhaust myself otherwise, muttered Katsuki, probably knock myself out too. Only an idiot would incapacitate themselves in this situation. Meanwhile, in the mountain zone, Kaminari had used his strongest attack, which has the unfortunate side effect of frying his brain. Back at the shores of the flood zone. Wait, how do you know that? Thought Tsuyu. Thought Izuku. You don't want an answer to that? Mentally muttered Katsuki. I asked this about that massive explosion, thought Achiko. Oh no, not again, sighed Inko. Please don't tell them, thought Izuku. They could feel Inko's amusement from the connection. Wait, thought Tsuyu. Now's not the time to focus on that, thought Katsuki. The flood zone was still rising, and a giant hand made out of water aimed for them. However, suddenly the water hand dissolved. What the Duce? Yelled the villain who was the one creating the hand. Izuku noticed that the guy was in range, so he stretched out his tongue and grabbed him, slamming in the ground hard. How did that even happen? Asked Mineta. They heard Aizawa clear his throat. Mr. Aizawa. He looked at Tsuyu and Izuku and sighed. You know that's permanent, right, Azui? Asked Aizawa. I know, Ribbit, sighed Tsuyu. Aizawa sighed. He had heard that Izuku needed to make 2 more partners by the end of the years, but having to make one like this. That was our last guy with hydrokinetic, yelled one of the remaining villain. That's not important. We can take them, yelled another. Back with All Might. The monster that punched All Might hand, but the mountain of a man had gotten right back up. He came back with his own punch, but it didn't do anything to the monster. Haven't you figured it out yet? Asked the hand-covered villain. That thing was built to destroy you. What? Asked All Might. What do you mean built? Just as I said, we built it, engineered with shock abortion, said the hand-covered. It can take any hit you can throw out at it. The only way to beat it to slowly gouge out its skin, piece by piece. All Might scowled. This wasn't good. But at the shore of the flood zone, the villain came into for the attack. Izuku jumped up high, dodging one, and then grabbed the guy with his tongue, sending him flying. Meanwhile, Tsuyu managed to kick another villain away. You're actually doing a good job with my quirk. Tsuyu. Yeah. Thought Izuku, blushing a little. That was when one trying to attack Tsuyu. However, Tsuyu suddenly got the feeling and placed her hand on her gem. There was a flash of dark green light as a wand appeared in her hand. It had a dark green handle, and on top was multicolored gem that resembled a frog. Careful, we don't know what it will do, thought Izuku. However, a liquid shot from the gem hitting the villain, who started to scream as he fell to the ground. Well, it looks like you shoot poison from your wand, thought Katsuki as she gave an explosion knee jab to a guy. Tsuyu could only dumbly nod. It made a sort of sense that her poisonous mucus would be the thing that her wand would use to attack. Everything else had to do with her body. It would make sense it would be something like that. Meanwhile, Mineta was running from them when he decided to try something. He started to pluck off his hairball and toss them at the villains. They were thankfully stuck to the ground because of this. Kirishima meanwhile managed to knock out a few of the villains, while Aizawa did the same, sewing his scarf, which was a weapon. That was when suddenly the floor was turned to ice, trapping the last 2 villains. Everyone turned to where the ice came from, and it was Todoroki. What the F, icy hot, said Katsuki. The bicolored boy didn't say anything, but did look at Tsuyu for a few seconds, then at Izuku, who tuned off Tsuyu's quirk, returning to normal. Aizawa looked at Izuku, Tsuyu, and Mineta. Let this be a learning experience for you 3. If you have to flee, make you get far away, said Aizawa. Yes, sir. All 3 of them said at the same time. Aizawa nodded. Also, Mineta, your scalp is bleeding, said Kirishima. I know, said Mineta. Midoriya, should the other teachers be here soon? asked Aizawa. Mom, thought Izuku. They should be there any minute, explained Inko. He then relayed that information to Aizawa. I see, said Aizawa. All right. Can you also please inform 13 of Todoroki? Oh right, said Izuku and Nithoget. Hey, Todoroki is with us. Then Icy Hot just stole our thunder, Thoget Katsuki with her eye twitching. I'll tell 13, Thoget Ochiko. He knew he had to lead the 6 students to safety. I found that there's really only 2 or 3 threats here. The rest are weak cannon fodder, said Todoroki. Yeah, we noticed Icy Hot. Tell us we don't know, muttered Katsuki. Aizawa glared at the students, shutting them up. Meanwhile, All Might struggled to fight against the creature. However, he came up with an idea. The monster had its brain exposed, and he decided to give it a pile driver. However, Kurogyari had used his quirk to ensure that the warp didn't work. All Might was trapped. Then it got worse, as the Nomu grabbed All Might's side, digging into it and causing him to bleed a lot. Aizawa's group was somewhat far away in their escape path when this happened. At the entrance, Ochiko paled. Uraraka, what's wrong? Asked Tenya. Something's very wrong, said Ochiko. The Midoriya apartment. Inko was frozen. She felt the fear. What's going on? Thought Inko. Back at the Izuku just watched in horror. He didn't know why, but his legs just started moving on their own as he ran to help All Might. All Might saw this and didn't know how to react. And none of were sure how this was going to go, but hopefully Izuku would pull through. Next time, what will happen with Izuku? Will he be okay? Especially since he was running without thinking. Also, what will happen when the teachers arrive? Find out next time. Chapter 8. Moving without thinking. Deku really wasn't thinking why he ran. He just ran. All Might saw the boy with animal traits run towards him, and he knew what was going on. He knew the instinct well, and was proud to see it in his students. Well, he was also extremely worried due to the fact that it was a monster he was fighting, but he was still a little proud. Izuku, on the other hand, was still running, not thinking. Then he began to panic. Oh man, what am I doing? What am I doing? Thought Izuku as he got closer. That was when an idea hit him. He didn't even about it. He activated his mom's quirk and pulled it hard. The monster went limp as everyone gaped in horror at what he was just did. Reminder: the monster had an exposed brain. He ripped out a chunk of its brain right out of its head. Even Izuku was shocked what he did. The other nearby students. Did Midoriya just rip out that monster's brain? Said Mineta. He wasn't thinking. How do you know? Asked Mineta. The telepathic link is still open, guessed Aizawa. Oh, what the F dash, thought Katsuki. Kaken. I wasn't thinking, thought Izuku. Clearly, muttered Katsuki. What happened? Asked Inko. Is everything all right? Asked Ochiko. You don't want the answer to that, thought Tsu. All Might, on the other hand, looked at Izuku. Young Midoriya, said All Might. I didn't mean to rip out the monster's brain, cried Izuku. It's all right, assured All Might. Izuku sighed. You know, many great heroes often talk about how oftentimes their legs started moving before they could even think, said All Might. Izuku looked at All Might. Did they ever say anything about doing something gross or crazy? Asked Izuku. A few times, said All Might with a sweat drop. Izuku sighed when he said that. However, there were still a couple problems. The hand-covered villain was scratching himself. That NPC ruined my Nomu, yelled the hand-covered villain. Tamura Shigaraki, calm yourself, said Kurogyari. He ruined my Nomu, yelled the man known as Shigaraki. He ran towards Izuku with his hands outstretched. Thankfully, this didn't catch Izuku off guard, who immediately switched to Katsuki Quirk and set off some explosions before he could reach him. Growled out the villain. I thought you had a different quirk. Izuku just stared at the villain. However, the villain got up. He touched part of the ground and it began to dissolve into dust. Izuku paled, glad he unleashed that explosion. Young Midoriya, said All Might. Izuku nodded. He knew he had to get away from him. Then things got worse. The monster started to twitch. Both Izuku and All Might watched in horror as the creature's brain began to grow back a depth slowly. What? Yelled All Might. The monster got up. Oh, I guess its regeneration quirk is still working, said Shigaraki. What? Asked All Might. I thought you told me that its quirk was shock absorption. Much like your brat, it has multiple quirks, said Shigaraki. After all, it the genetically altered anti-symbol of peace. All Might glared at the hand-covered villain. Now Nomo. Kill the rabbit-eared brat, said Shigaraki. However, Izuku came up with an idea he hoped would work. He turned back to his animal form, and the monster stopped. It just stared at Izuku, who breathed a sigh of relief before running as fast he could, which wasn't very fast due to his tiny legs. What quirks does that brat have? Yelled Shigaraki, honestly confused. I have no idea, said Kurogyri. Kill that stuffed toy, said Shigaraki. The monster now knew what to go after, once again went after Izuku. However, Katsuki ran in and grabbed Izuku. Thanks, Kaken, said Izuku. Don't thank you me, you idiot, muttered Katsuki. Todoroki also froze the monster to stop it. However, it began to rip its limbs out. Remember of what Mr. Aizawa said, said Izuku. Katsuki nodded and ran as fast as she could. Shigaraki, on the other hand, was laughing. However, that's when things went wrong, this time for the villains. He was suddenly shot multiple times. Everyone turned to the entrance and saw that the rest of the teachers had arrived. Sorry everyone, but we got here as soon as I got the news, said Nizu, sitting on one of the teacher's shoulders. Shigaraki began to laugh hysterically. Of course the staff found out, yelled Shigaraki as he bled all over. Kuronari, get me out of here. And Nomu, kill them all. Everyone watched as Kurogyri got him out before anyone could do anything. As Kurogyri got Shigaraki out of there, the monster left the ice. Aizawa had joined Katsuki, making sure Izuku was okay, and he also eyed the monster. Should I? He asked. Don't worry, said All Might, I got this. He said that the quirk was shock absorption, not nullification. What are you planning? Asked Aizawa, knowing he wasn't going to like the answer. I have to go beyond Plush Ultra, said All Might. He ran towards the monster and began to let loose a barrage of punches, extremely powerful punches. As he did that, the other students of the group met up with Katsuki and Izuku. They all watched as he launched the monster out of the dome. So amazing, said Izuku as his tail wagged. Plus that thing won't try to kill you anymore, so that's good, muttered Katsuki. Izuku sighed when she said that. When he was done, All Might clutched his side and collapsed. All Might, cried Izuku. Kirishima began to run towards him. However, a wall suddenly sprung up. It was from one of the teachers, a man that looked like a block of cement named Cementos. Hey, yelled Kirishima. All Might was injured and he shouldn't be bothered right now, said Aizawa. He has a point, said Tsuyu. She looked at Katsuki, who de-transformed. Just focus back, said Katsuki. Tsuyu nodded and de-transformed as well. She looked at the necklace that suddenly appeared around her neck. You'll get used to it, said Katsuki. I hope so, sighed Tsuyu. Katsuki sighed and then put Izuku on the ground. Deku? Do you think you can turn human? Asked Katsuki. Why? Asked Izuku. Katsuki just glared at him and he turned human. Katsuki grabbed her friend's collar and began to shake him. What the f, Deku? What the f dash? Yelled Katsuki. You didn't have to get involved. My legs just moved on their own, cried Izuku. All Might smiled form behind the wall, but it soon faltered as he realized something. I know you were thinking. I know it. Frog Face knows it. Think before you do things, yelled Katsuki. I'll try, cried Izuku. All Might sighed. He was looking for someone. Someone to take on something great. However, that thing must be kept a secret, and while Izuku was perfect in some way, the fact that he wouldn't be able to keep it a secret from those he had a bond with would be a problem. And because of that, his search would have to continue. All Might? Asked Cementos. I'm fine, said All Might as he began to steam. Suddenly the steam increased and he shrunk down into the form of the thin teacher. Indeed, the two were one in the same. And the thing he was searching for did tied into his transformation. Meanwhile, in a bar somewhere, Shigaraki laid bleeding on the floor, talking to some voices being broadcast on a TV. Kurojiri reappeared informing that Nomu was sent flying by All Might. How could everything go so wrong? I'm sure it was that rabbit brat, yelled Shigaraki. Rabbit brat? Asked one of the voices. He was someone who had multiple quirks, said Shigaraki. I don't know how, but it's clear he has some weird transformation along with an explosive one and a telekinesis quirk. I see, it sounds interesting, said the voice on the screen. I get the feeling like I should look in him. Not too long later at the USJ, all of the students had been gathered. All of them were fine. You ripped out part of that monster's brain? Asked Ochiko. Seriously? Asked Shiro. Izuku was blushing bright red. My body just moved on its own, and well, said Izuku, I used my mom's quirk and everyone just stared at him. You know what they say about the nice ones, said Jiro. Izuku continued to blush bright red. Katsuki still glared at Izuku, then took out her phone. Wait, what are you doing? Cried Izuku. It's better if I tell Auntie, said Katsuki. Izuku sighed knowing he couldn't fight it. He was going to be in so much trouble when he got home. But still, it was a miracle that no one had any major injuries. They soon headed back to school to give their states to the police. And the school would be closed for the next couple days to update their security. But still, it could have gone worse, a whole lot worse. Izuku was in trouble, and there was no way around that. Next time, Tsuyu goes to the Midoriya apartment to talk about her new status as a magical girl. Also, Nizu makes an offer to Inko. What is it? Find out next time. Chapter 9. After the USJ. After the USJ news spread that most of the villains were caught. Only Shigaraki and Kurojiri got away. Even Nomie the monster was caught and was oddly docile. Afterwards it was interesting for Tsuyu. She knew she had to explain to her parents about the whole magical girl thing and the fact that she now sometimes mind-linked to Izuku. Thankfully both Izuku and Katsuki gave her their parents' phone numbers, telling her to only call Katsuki's parents if they didn't believe her. They decided not to call Inko due to the fact that she was bonded with her own son and she would be biased, so they called the Bakugos. And that conversation? Well, Katsuki took after her mother Mitsuki. I know it's effing weird, but Izuku's a cinnamon roll. He would rather die than harm your daughter and do weird things to her, muttered Mitsuki. Are you sure? Asked Baru. I'm pretty effing sure, said Mitsuki. Oh, can you hold a second? Although she wasn't talking on the phone, Tsuyu was able to hear the phone conversation and both her and Baru were able to hear whatever Mitsuki telling the person on her end. What the F, do you want, brat? They heard her yell. They didn't hear what the other person was saying. Look, I'm on the phone, your classmate's mom, she called without checking with Inko first. They heard Mitsuki yell. Both realized she was talking to Katsuki and they realized she said something else. Yeah, that is F'd up, they heard Mitsuki yell. Both Baru and Tsuyu had large sweat drops. That explains so much, thought Tsuyu. Once the conversation between mother and daughter was done, Mitsuki once again started talking to Baru. Also, there's nothing we can do, said Mitsuki. What do you mean? Asked Baru. All signs point to being unbreakable, said Mitsuki. Are you sure? Said Baru. Considering I've been there since the beginning, yeah, I'm pretty sure, said Mitsuki. Also, if he was a creeper, he wouldn't want to use his quirk. What do you mean? Asked Baru. Look, just because they have a bond doesn't mean they can't hurt Izuku. Katsuki's got Izuku injured many times through the years, including when using her magical girl form, explained Mitsuki. Really? Asked Baru. It's true, said Mitsuki, and they've gotten into plenty of arguments. Just because they have a bond doesn't mean it's brainwashing. Baru didn't answer to this. This all FNG weird. Trust me. I know, said Mitsuki, but if she wants to be a hero, that power-up will be great for her even if the costumes is extremely embarrassing. But what if? Said Baru. If Izuku ever tries anything, well, let's just say there is a line, and my daughter is the first in line, said Mitsuki, though the first reaction will more than likely be trying to figure out why he's acting so weird, but other than that you can trust him, don't worry. Besides, if he was a perv, they wouldn't have let him in the school if his quirk involves having a telepathic bond with girls. Baru looked at her daughter. Look, like I keep saying, Izuku is a good kid, Don't worry about it, explained Mitsuki. Now if you excuse me, I have talked to something involving my daughter. Once Mitsuki hung up. Is this boy really a problem? Asked Bu. Not really, said Tsu. He has self-confidence issues. Are you sure? Asked Bu. He was elected class representative and gave it up when someone proved to be a good leader, said Tsuyu. I really should have mentioned that from the beginning. You should have, sighed Bu. Though the bright side, Tsuyu's little sister thought it was so awesome that her big sister was now a magical girl. The next day, Tsuyu headed the Midoriya apartment. She was somewhat surprised to find that Katsuki opened the door. It's about time, frog face, muttered Katsuki. Is Achiko here? Asked Tsuyu. She lives in the neighborhood, so she was the first one here, said Katsuki. She led Tsuyu into the living room where Izuku and Achiko were waiting for her. She also noticed that Izuku was in animal form, which surprised her. I would have thought that you would be human. About that, laughed Izuku, rubbing the back of his head. He's not allowed to turn human until he goes back to school, said Inko from the kitchen as she making lunch. That's your punishment for running into without thinking. Yeah, sighed Izuku. Tsuyu sat down as Inko came into the living room. So what do you want to hear first? Because there's a sheet ton we need to unpack about this, said Katsuki. Maybe we should start with the set effect, said Achiko. You mean what happens if you bond a boy? Izuku nodded and explained it all, including how they knew about it. So that's it. Katsuki was glaring at her. We're stuck with you, muttered Katsuki. No, it's fine, you have no control over what your quirk. Really? Asked Izuku, trying not to cry. Tsuyu nodded. But you know. I can't keep it a secret forever, sighed Izuku. I will have to tell everyone, but it's still the first week and well, we told Leg Day, but that's because of many reasons, said Katsuki. Tsuyu nodded. There are plenty of reasons for Ida to earn their trust to tell them that. So you two were bullied because of that. Yeah, sighed Izuku. I'm surprised that you took it. Katsuki snorted. It was mostly girl tactics, said Katsuki. The guys were terrified, but the girls, they would send me notes, fake love letters and that sort of stuff. Izuku didn't want to bring up that many times they used a certain term, but realized Katsuki had to be the one to bring it up. Maybe we should change the subject, said Izuku. Tsuyu nodded. What about the emotions? Oh yeah, that, said Izuku. If the telepathy is activated and one feels a really strong emotion, the rest of us feel it. But it rarely ever happens. I think it's because emotions were running high, said Katsuki. I think in that sort of situation we can't keep it to ourselves. It does make sense, said Inko. Tsuyu nodded. Then she remembered something. So what happened with Bakugo's strongest attack? Said Tsuyu. Inko was giggling while Izuku and Katsuki looked embarrassed. Please don't make us tell, said Izuku. Oh come on, said Achiko, as it was clear she didn't know the story either. They're going to find out one day, teased Inko. Izuku sighed while Katsuki just glared. Is there anything else I need to know? Well, I'm sure you noticed I look young, said Inko. I was waiting for a good time to say it. Oh okay, said Inko. Anyways, there's another side effect to the quirk that might happen to you. They explained about the fact that her aging had stopped and it might happen to them, but they still weren't sure. That's, said Tsuyu at a loss for words. There's why I don't want to advertise it, said Izuku. If it does affect you, then word might spread. I do want another partner, but not because they want enteral youth. That does make sense. Plus we don't know if only affected mom or not, said Izuku. Anything else you need to know? Asked Katsuki. I do like some part of the costume, but is possible to change it? Asked Tsuyu. No, said Katsuki. Tsuyu was about to say something but then realized that she probably tried to figure out every way to change the costume when it first happened. I think there's everything covered, except for one thing, said Achiko. What? Asked Tsuyu. You have to see Deku's room, said Achiko. What? Asked Tsuyu. Please don't, said Izuku. It's adorable, said Achiko. It's part nerd room, part elf room, said Katsuki. What does that mean? Asked Tsuyu. Nothing, cried Izuku. She's going to see it, said Inko. Izuku sighed, and knowing that it was futile to try and stop her, they showed her Izuku's room. It's cute, said Tsuyu. Izuku sighed. After all the combination of a nerd room and tiny furniture, there was no other word for it other than cute and adorable. They ate lunch, with Inko offering if Tsuyu ever wanted to come for a meal that she could. However, as ending, there was a call on the house phone. Inko went to pick it up. Hello, she asked. Hello, Mrs. Midoriya, said the voice on the other end, who she immediately recognized as Principal Nizu. Oh, Principal Nizu, is everything all right? Said Inko. The four looked at each other. Everything is fine, said Principal Nizu. However, there is something I wish to discuss with you tomorrow afternoon. Really, what? Asked Inko. That's for tomorrow, said Principal Nizu. Oh, all right, said Inko. See you tomorrow then, said Principal Nizu. With the call over, Inko was a little confused. Is everything all right? Asked Izuku. It's fine, said Inko. He just wants to talk to me tomorrow about something. That's weird, said Izuku. Achiko, Katsuki, can one of you come over tomorrow and stay with Izuku? Said Inko. Mom, cried Izuku. Sorry, but you're still grounded, said Inko, and I want someone to make sure that you don't break it. Izuku sighed when she said that. Tsuyu watched, amused by everything. Even if it was weird, it was already clear that it wasn't bad. The next day, Inko headed to the school and Aizawa waited for her outside the gates. Mrs. Midoriya? Asked Aizawa. Yes, she said. He gave her a visitor's badge. Please tell me you're handling your son after his recklessness, said Aizawa. Inko's sweat dropped. You're Mr. Aizawa, aren't you? Asked Inko. Aizawa nodded. She was led to Niza's office. Hello, Mrs. Midoriya. It's nice to meet you in person, said Nizu. Nice to meet you, said Inko. Now you must wondering why I wanted to meet you, said Nizu. Of course, said Inko. You see, as the leader of this League of Villains got away, we're worried they might strike again, said Nizu. Inko paled when he said that. However, the other day you were invaluable to the rescue of the students. Had it not been for your bond with your son, we wouldn't have known about what's going on, and I fear that Eraserhead, 13, or any of the students could have gotten hurt or worse. Your husband's job provides a lot, doesn't it? Asked Nizu. Yes, he's in America right now, but he makes enough so I don't have to work, said Inko. But if you ever wanted to, would it be out of the question? Asked Nizu. What are you asking? Asked Inko. The creature of unknown species smiled. Sometime later, Inko came home. Both Izuku and Katsuki were watching a movie when she came in. What did he want to talk to you about? Asked Izuku. Well, I have a job now, said Inko, blushing. What, really? Asked Izuku. Inko nodded. He hired me as his personal assistant, said Inko. Wait, is it because you can act as a warning system if something happens to our class again? Said Katsuki. Yes, she admitted. So you're really going to working at the school, said Izuku. You don't mind, do you? Asked Inko. No, it's just really surprising, said Izuku. That hand BSTRD got away, said Katsuki. They're still worried about him if they hired you. They are, said Inko. Izuku sighed. Besides, said Inko, you two always figured that when you form an agency that I'll have some sort of job there just in case. Izuku blushed. But that was just silly kid talk. He said. Come on, Deku. We both knew she would take it seriously one day, said Katsuki. Izuku nodded too. Blush. It's okay, said Inko. Besides, with everything it would probably help put my mind at ease getting to know your teachers. Izuku looked at his mother, nodded. With that, things settled with Tsuyu and things were changing for Inko with her new job as Nizu's assistant. Though there would be a schedule change for Inko, it would be fine, though she would have to figure out her new schedule with everything. But still, having extra money and helping Izuku's class was a very good idea, and it looked everything was going work out. Next time, it's announced that UA Sports Festival is happening soon. And everyone is excited for it. What will happen? Find out next time. Chapter 10. The Sports Festival. Having his mom get a job at the school was a big deal. So of course Izuku did have to tell Achiko and Tsuyu, who were surprised and not surprised at the same time, though it was decided to keep it a secret for the time being due to various reasons. It wouldn't be kept a secret forever, but it would be told eventually. But for now it would be a secret between them as well as Ida, which they decided to tell him once they got back to school. But of course they would have to go back to school. Everyone was in class waiting for it to start. "Hey Bakugo, how have things been?" asked Kirishima, trying to make small talk. "Just the usual," muttered Katsuki, glaring at him. "Kaken, I think he's trying to befriend you," said Izuku. "Whatever," muttered Katsuki. This only made Kirishima sweat drop. Once everyone was ready for class, Ida stepped up and scolded everyone. "Everyone, we need to be ready for class," he yelled out. "So everyone get into your seats right now." "You're the only one not in their seat," said Kaminari, causing most of the class to laugh. Shortly after Ida took his seat, Aizawa came into the room. "All of you now know what it's like to face villains," said Aizawa. "However, your fight isn't over yet." The class was nervous as he said that. "In 2 weeks we'll be hosting the sports festival," said Aizawa. "What, really?" yelled the class. "Is a good idea to be holding it?" asked Mineta. "I mean, what if another villain attacks? It's necessary to demonstrate that the school's crisis protocols are still sound. That's the thinking at least," said Aizawa. "Plus we will have a police presence 5 times stronger than in years past." "Really?" asked Mineta. "All over a sports festival?" "Mineta, have you ever watched the sports festival?" asked Izuku. "Of course I have," said Mineta. "The sports festival is Japan's biggest sporting events," said Aizawa. He began to explain that the UA Sports Festival had become the biggest sports event of all time due to the rise of quirks. "Plus the nation's top heroes will be watching, Scots will be there," said Yaoyorozu. "That's right," said Aizawa. "This will be the best chance to be noticed by the heroes. It only happens once a year, which means you only have 3 chances. If you want to be a hero, this is your best opportunity." The class was excited at this now. And they were even more excited when lunch rolled around so they could talk about it. "Everyone's so excited," said Izuku. "Of course, everyone's excited," said Katsuki. "It's the FING Sports Festival. Although I wouldn't use such crass language, Bakugo is correct. Everyone is in high spirits," said Ida. "I know," said Izuku. "You guys?" said Achiko. Everyone looked at Achiko, and the face she was making was terrifying. "Are you all ready for the sports festival?" said Achiko. Katsuki made the hand signal. Round face, calm down. "You look you're going to murder someone," thought Katsuki. "This is the face that going to crush it," responded Achiko. "Do I want to know?" asked Dinko. "She's just really excited for the sports festival," explained Tsuyu. "Scarily excited," thought Izuku. Once Achiko calmed, they all headed to lunch, with Tsuyu de-icing to join since she was now one of Izuku's partners. They also decided to let Ida on the newest secret. "Wait, your mother was hired as Nizu's personal assistant?" asked Ida. "She was," said Izuku. "Is it as a precaution?" asked Ida, figuring out the reason. "The principal figured that having her around if there's another situation like that, then she'll be here and not waste several minutes by calling," said Katsuki. "You want to keep it a secret, don't you?" asked Ida. "Yeah," said Izuku, "for so many reasons." "Really, why?" asked Ida. "Just people's reactions. I mean, my mom is working here. What if they think the teachers will favor me because of it?" said Izuku. The group looked at Izuku. "That one isn't going to happen." She had a point. What with Aizawa as their teacher? It's also a pretty low job. "I don't think any of the teachers will care," muttered Katsuki. "Also, there's the fact that she's not a hero and she has a job here," said Izuku. "It might raise a few questions." The answer being, "Oh right. Deku can call her telepathically like what happened at the USA," muttered Katsuki. Izuku sighed. "Kaken," cried Izuku. "It makes sense you want to keep it a secret for now," said Ida. "Yeah," sighed Izuku. Don't worry, it will be fine, said Ochako. Plus I don't think anyone will figure out she's your mom until you tell people. I know, said Izuku. Why? Asked Ida. We'll explain when you meet her, said Katsuki. Ida nodded. The topic changed once they got to the cafeteria. What they didn't notice was Todoroki looking at the group, eyeing Izuku in particular. When school let out, they found that their door was surrounded by members of the other classes. Why are they here? Yelled Izuku in his animal form on Katsuki's shoulder. They're obviously scoping out the competition, plus we're the class that survived the villain attack, said Katsuki. Out of the way, cannon fodder. We all have places to be. Kaken, yelled Izuku. Bakugo, that was rude. You can't call your fellow students cannon fodder, scolded Ida. It's true. We came here to scope out the competition, said a voice. It was a boy with lavender hair and bags under his eyes. If the hero course. I got to say I'm disillusioned with someone who's so high and mighty that they can just yell at people and bring along their stuffed toy from home, said the lavender-haired boy. I'm a student, sighed Izuku. He wasn't even fazed by being called a stuffed animal anymore. There was an awkward silence. He's so cute, heard a girl in the crowd. Wait, how did a stuffed toy get into the hero course? Asked someone else in the crowd. Wow, the fact that there's a living stuffed toy in the class makes it even worse, said the lavender-haired boy. I mean, there's a lot of us in the other courses because we couldn't make it in. And it's depressing to know that someone with such a quirk got in. Izuku was about to say something. No, don't waste this extra with an explanation, and don't show him either, he clearly shouldn't know about your quirk, said Katsuki. Izuku sighed. Depending on the results, they might consider putting us into the hero course, and it's the same for you. For a general studies kid like me, this is a declaration of war. It's time to knock you off your pedestals, said the boy. The students in class mostly looked at him nervously. A boy with silver hair was about to yell something out. Excuse me, called out Inko to the crowd fathered. The students blocking the doorway looked at her and knew she had to be facility. Can you please not block the doors? Said Inko. Also, Principal Nizu wants to speak with you, Rarika, Azui, and Bakugo. She seemed to take a break after saying, Bakugo, and made a face. That feels so weird, she thought with a sweat drop. She knew she had to professional, but she knew Katsuki since before Izuku had gotten his quirk. It makes sense it would be weird, even without the telepathy. Those that knew who she was all figured out what she was thinking. To be fair, Katsuki also called her auntie in return. I wonder why he wants to talk to us. Setsu, take a guess what we have in common, said Katsuki. They realized it had something to do with the fact they were magical girls. Izuku jumped to Ida, who clearly offered to carry him. Katsuki glared at the crowd of students as they made their way through. The crowd also dissipated, though the silver-haired boy did yell out, "You better not make us hero course students look bad." Who was that? Asked Mineta once the crowd dissipated enough. I had heard that Principal Nizu had a new personal assistant, said Ida. Wow, she is a fox, said Kaminari. You got that right, said Mineta. Izuku glared at the two. Midoriya, perhaps we should wait for Bakugo, Azui, and Uraraka at the lockers, said Ida. Izuku didn't answer, just continued to glare at the two. At the principal's office, the three girls met up with him. So let me guess, this has to do with our magical girl powers and the sports festival, said Katsuki. Are quite right, said Nizu. You know how the sports festival is divided up. The three nodded. There were 3 events, the first 2 being sets of preliminaries before the main event. I'm afraid I have to ask you to not use your magical girl abilities for the first 2 events, sighed Nizu. What really? Asked Ochako. It does make sense, said Tsuyu, since our quirks are much stronger. They looked at Katsuki. Unlike them, she had her magical girl powers since she was little, and it was a big part of her life. Whatever, said Katsuki. So if we make it to the final event, we can use them. Setsu, if you want to, it will be up to you. But please don't use them during the first events, said Nizu. It doesn't matter, my quirk is one of the strongest in class, said Katsuki. I was planning to limit myself anyways during the first 2 matches and only use my magical girl powers during the third in certain fights. This just made Achiko and Tsuyu sweat drop. I'm glad you agree with me, said Nizu. You were worried was going to make a scene, weren't you? Asked Katsuki. There was an awkward silence. Seriously, muttered Katsuki. Well, at least you agree to it. I have nothing to worry about, said Nizu. The 3 girls nodded in agreement. After the meeting, the 3 girls met up with Ida and Izuku. Is everything all right? Asked Ida. We can't use our magical girl powers for the first 2 rounds. Satsuki. That makes a lot of sense, said Izuku. Ida looked at Katsuki. What were you expecting me to make a scene? Asked Katsuki. No, of course not, said Ida, adjusting his glasses. Katsuki once again explained her plan as they headed to the train station. Wait, which fights were planning to use it? Asked Izuku. All of you, including you, Leg Day, said Katsuki. What, really? Asked Ida, surprised. I have my reasons, said Katsuki, also icy hot. Why him? Asked Achiko. He froze a building, not to mention when he froze that monster during the USJ. If I have to be a magical girl while fighting him, I will be, said Katsuki. You know, Tsu, I just realized something. Why didn't you set up a time to use one of the training grounds to test out your new magical girl abilities? Said Ida. Not to mention you, Deku, said Katsuki. Both Tsuyu and Izuku's sweat dropped as they realized he was right about that. Well, they still had 2 weeks before then, and all of them were hoping that they would do their best and gain the attention needed to get recruited by a hero agency. With all of them unaware that the side effect of Izuku's quirk would be revealed to not only the school, but the entire world as well. Chapter 11. The first event. The next couple weeks were interesting. Training was the main thing everyone did. Some physically, others mentally. But for Izuku it was learning how to utilize Tsuyu's quirk. He was also able to figure out a move that was a combination of the quirks as well. However, there was a problem during the training. One of the training grounds, Siro was training when he heard a crash from a nearby building. He looked towards the building when Izuku in animal form suddenly plopped to the ground in front of him. Midoriya? Asked Siro. Hey, I'm in a lot of pain right now. Can you get recovery, girl? Said Izuku. Weren't you training in another part of the training ground? Asked Siro with a sweat drop. Practiced a new jump, a stronger one. Please get help, said Izuku. Oh right, said Siro. Thankfully his injuries weren't too bad and Recovery Girl was able to heal him right up. Also during a day they didn't train. Ida was introduced to Inko. It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Midoriya, said Ida, bowing at the mother. It's nice to meet you too, said Inko. And then she began to cry. A lot, with her tears like a waterfall. Are you all right? Asked Ida. I'm sorry. It's just that I wasn't sure if Izuku would ever have a friend who saw past the strangeness of his quirk and all of the side effects it has. Cried Inko. I'm just so happy. Ida not said that both Izuku and Katsuki didn't seem fazed by all of the tears. I told you she was a crier, said Katsuki. Ida wasn't sure how to respond to that. There was also an adorable incident where Satsuki got Tsuyu to transform in front of her friends to prove that her big sister was a magical girl. But soon enough it was time for the sports festival. All of Class 1A were getting ready in a single locker room. I wish we could wear our costumes, said Ishido. They wanted to keep everything fair, said Ojiro. Wait, what about you 3? Asked Hagakure. We can't transform until the third event, said Achiko. Like I needed to be told that, muttered Katsuki. Izuku was nervous as he was getting ready. Midoriya, said Todoroki, approaching him. Izuku looked at his classmate. Objectively speaking, I'm stronger than you, said Todoroki. What? Asked Izuku. The only reason why you have so many quirks is because of your partners, said Todoroki. I know that, said Izuku. What are you trying to say? I will defeat you, said Todoroki, as well are your partners. What? Yelled Izuku, confused. Then he turned into his animal form in surprise. Why are you declaring war on Deku? Asked Katsuki. I have my reasons, said Todoroki. Do you mind telling them? Asked Katsuki. What exactly is your relationship with Midoriya? Asked Todoroki. He's like my brother, said Katsuki, glaring at Todoroki. I said that when school started. Todoroki just narrowed his eyes at her. It's almost time to enter the arena, said Ida. Deku, you need to turn back, said Achiko. I know, sighed Izuku, taking a breath and then turning back into his human form. And on enough they headed to the arena. All right, we have the class that faced off against the villains, Class 1A, called out Present Mike, who was acting as the announcer. Then we have the other heroics class who will be fighting for attention, it's Class 1B. Also have the other courses, General Studies, Support, and Business. As they made their way into the arena, the general course all grumbled. Of course they would focus on the hero course students. Said one of them. We're just here to make them look good. Said another. In the faculty box, Inko was sitting with the teachers. After all, she was now part of the staff. Inko was little nervous. You know it's okay if you cheer for you, son, said 13. Or his friends, added All Might. I know, said Inko. She looked at All Might. Flashback. The staff knew they had to let Inko in the secret of All Might's health. What do you have to tell me? Asked Inko. There is something I must show you, explained All Might in his muscle-bound form. He then switched to his skeletal form, freaking out Inko. All Might? What's going on? She cried out. I assure you I am all, said All Might. Then he coughed up blood, causing Inko to faint. After she woke up and calmed down, they explained what happened to him. Years ago he had gotten into a fight that destroyed one of his lungs and his stomach. He could now only hold his hero form for 3 hours a day, though he might have lost some time due to the fight with the Nomu. I'll keep it a secret for as long as possible, said Inko. Before she could explain, All Might knew what she meant. It will be hard to keep it a secret from them, he said. I won't think about it, but one day I might accidentally slip, said Inko. All Might nodded. She was a bit worried after she was sometime mentally connected to 4 teenagers. It was hard to keep secrets between all 5 of them, but still she was sure she could keep it a secret for as long as possible. End of flashback. In the main arena, the Diamantex teacher, officially known as Midnight, was the one who was going to be the referee. Is that really appropriate? Asked Tokoyami. All right, giving the student pledge is Katsuki Bakugo, said Midnight. Really, why Bakugo? Asked Kaminari. I think it's because she got the highest score, said Izuku. For the hero course, muttered a nearby girl, form General Studies. Katsuki stepped up to the microphone. Izuku was a little worried what his best friend might say. Thankfully it wasn't that bad. All of us here are trying to be heroes, and that means doing our best. So none of you better half-butt it. Got it? Said Katsuki. No one was sure how to react to that speech. However, Katsuki seemed to glare at Todoroki with the speech. She had noticed that Todoroki never used half of his quirk. The truth about his quirk was that it wasn't just ice, but he could use fire on his left side of his body and ice on the right side. But he never used his fire for some reason. But Todoroki quickly realized that was her own delectation of war. In the announcer's booth, Present Mike was confused. Well, that was an interesting pledge, said Present Mike. He had also dragged in Aizawa to be his co-announcer. I believe Bakugo has her reasons, he explained. Right, said Midnight. Let's get on with our first event. A screen behind her showed her a wheel, which spun to obstacle course race. All right, let me explain the rules, said Midnight. She began to give out the rules, which was that they would race around the stadium and there would be various obstacles scattered, weren't allowed to leave the track. And soon enough almost all of the students were at the starting the line. It should be noted that not all of the students were participating. Some didn't want to participate, like the business course students. They didn't care about the sports festival other than running concessions and running stock STMLTN. But the point was not all of the classes were there. But the majority was. Anyways, they were all ready. Everyone patrioting were getting ready to good. And soon enough the green light lit up and everyone made their way through the path to the outside the stadium, which turned out to be too narrow and it was a huge bottleneck. However, Izuku had an idea to clear it. He turned into his animal form and jumped onto a nearby student. "What the? This is..." And he began to jump all over the other students. "Sorry," said Izuku. "Oh, come on," said a student. "Sorry." Izuku apologized. "Seriously, you think you just walk all over us?" said another student. "I'm sorry." Izuku once again apologized. "Really, Midoriya?" asked Jiro. Really sorry," said Izuku. However, people started making their way toward the exit. Todoroki froze the ground to ensure that many people would make it out. However, a good chunk of his figure, he pulled some like that and managed to dodge the ice path. "I knew you were going to do that," said Ojiro, who managed to dodge it thanks to his experience during their first class. Soon enough, the Real race had gotten startled, even with the ice floor, which a lot of people were having a hard time with. Though once Izuku was out of the narrow exit, he decided to the long jump, which was what he dubbed the jump he did well during the long jump, which was to unleash Achiko's quirk, then quickly switch to Katsuki's. "You think you can make it using that?" said Katsuki as she passed him. "We'll just have to see," laughed Izuku. However, that was when Mineta passed them both, using his hairball to jump around, laughing about how he was first place. Then he got hit by the first obstacle, that is quite literally, as the obstacle were the robots from the entrance exam, including multiple 0-pointers. "Alright, it's the first obstacle. The robot Inferno," called out Present Mike. In the faculty box, Inko stared at the 0-pointers in shock. "These are the 0-pointers?" she asked. None of the teachers answered. Inko sighed. She knew that robots were big, but not that big. Back on the race course, Todoroki froze one of the robots. "Careful," he said as he got away. "It's off balance, on purpose." And soon the robot crashed. It did fall on 2 students, though thankfully one of Kirishima was able to harden. The other was the silver boy from class 1B named Tetsu, who had a quirk that turned him to steel. However, the rest of the students knew they had to team up in order to get past the obstacles. "Achiko," called out Izuku. "Oh right," said Achiko. Izuku activated her quirk. Something they discovered through training was that if they both used the quirk, it would be a far less strain for both of them. Though admittingly, they might hit a bit of backlash from such a big machine. But it was far better than if they did it on their own. They both touched one of the 0-pointers at the same time. The giant robot floated in the air. The 2 of them, along with many other students, got past that particular one. Once many of them were clear, both Izuku and Achiko at the same out called out, "Release." It crashed down to the ground, thankfully not crushing anyone. "You guys okay?" asked Ishido. The 2 did look nauseous. "We'll be fine," said Izuku. "Good, because I don't want to see you vomit again," said Ishido. Izuku's sweat dropped when she said that. "I normally like rainbows, but that was just pushing it," said Ishido. "I get it," said Izuku. However, what Izuku and Achiko didn't notice was that a student from class 1B was looking at Izuku. It was a boy with blonde hair and gray eyes. Once the 2 recovered from the backlash, they counted the race. Eventually they got to the next obstacle, which was a large cannon, with many ropes that they would have to use to cross. "Alright, they're making there to the second obstacle, something we dubbed the fall," called out Resent Mike. It was a girl from support that got everyone attention as she used her gear to cross over while laughing manically. Many people stared at her, though Izuku quickly got over it. He knew he had a new move that he was practicing. Flashback. Izuku was practicing the new combination move, which was an upgrade of the long jump. He was with all 3 partners to give him tips on using the 3 quirks. "Alright, you think you can do it?" asked Katsuki. "I think so," said Izuku. "Be careful," said Achiko. "I will," said Izuku. He turned on Tsuyu's quirk and used it to jump as high as he could. Then he immediately switched to Achiko's in midair, using the 0 gravity to go much higher. Then once he figured that he was high enough, he switched to Katsuki and propelled himself forward. Then he crashed into a building that was pretty far away. The 3 girls all sweat dropped. The sweat dropped got bigger when they saw a green puff of smoke in the distance. "Maybe we should have used a different training ground," Let's go find him and make sure he's not injured, muttered Katsuki. I'm pretty sure he is, said Ochako. Thankfully Zero had gotten Recovery Girl. Also they went to a different training ground and he managed to perfect it there without crashing into anything. End of flashback. Are you going to do the super long jump? Asked Ochako. Izuku nodded. He activated Tsuyu Quirk and jumped, before switching to Ochiko's and then Katsuki. Zero watched as Izuku soar over him. Good job, he called out. Several other students looked at Zero. What I had to call Recovery Girl when he crashed into a building while training, said Zero. Fair enough, said a general student. Izuku managed to land using the blast to soften the impact. Inko of course was watching this. Oh Izuku, that was so amazing, she cried. Are you okay? That's a lot of tears, said All Might with a sweat drop. Back on the race course, Todoroki made it to the next obstacle. As it turned out it was a minefield. Some hapless student made there and hit the mine and was sent flying into the air almost comically. And now we're at the final obstacle. It's a minefield. Don't worry, the mines aren't that dangerous, just flashy, but they do pack a punch, said Present Mike. The students slowly made their way across the minefield. However, Katsuki, who was using her explosions to create propulsion, wasn't even touching the ground. However, she saw Todoroki and she couldn't help it. She decided to duke it out with him. She jumped at him and unleashed a punch. Todoroki blocked with some ice. Funny, I thought you got my message from my speech, said Katsuki. Why shouldn't I challenge Midoriya? Demanded Todoroki. You don't get it. Izuku doesn't care about being number one or being the best, he just wants to help people, said Katsuki. It's not a competition to him. Todoroki noticed she didn't call him Deku. It is, however, a competition to me, said Katsuki. She once again punched him but he blocked. And I don't plan to lose to someone who's half-butting it, said Katsuki. The two continued to fight. At the same time Izuku got to the minefield. Again, he asked. He knew what he had to do. He once again used to the super long jump. Both Katsuki and Todoroki noticed he used this method in the fight. Really, Deku? Yelled Katsuki. Sorry, Kaken, called out Izuku as he jumped over the two. Katsuki knew she had to catch up to her best friend. Todoroki had noticed the way he used his copied quirks and glared at him. Katsuki used her explosions to propel herself into the air to catch up to Izuku. Seriously, Deku? I just gave Icy Hot a speech how you didn't care about being number one, said Katsuki. Yeah, but I also want to be the best hero I can be, said Izuku. Deku, yelled Katsuki. Izuku laughed and blushed. However, that was when Todoroki caught up to the other of them, having bypassed the minefield using his ice stopped them from exploding. We're at the home stretch and it looked like Midoriya, Bakugo and Todoroki are all neck and neck, called out Present Mike. Let's see who will make it in first place. And soon enough 3 crossed the finish line. Taking first place, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku's tail wagged as it was announced. In second place we have Shoto Todoroki and third Katsuki Bakugo, called out Present Mike. Deku, yelled Katsuki, just letting you know that first place doesn't mean much right now. It's the third event that really matters. I know, laughed Izuku as his tail was still wagging. In the faculty box, Inko cried so much as the fact her son got first place. The teachers weren't sure how to react to all of the tears. Is anyone else's socks wet? Asked All Might. I'm going to grab a couple sports drinks for her, said 13. Thank you, cried Inko. On the field all of the students filtered in. Good job, Deku, cheered Ochako. I can't believe you got first place too, said Izuku. And you didn't crash into any buildings, said Tsuyu. Yeah, sighed Izuku. Ida on the other hand got 7th place and was lamenting that he got that low despite having a speed quirk. Once everyone got in, it was time to announce the next event. All right, called out Midnight, everyone who in the first 42 spots will move on to the next round. This meant everyone in the hero course would move on, along with 2 additional spots, with the lavender-haired boy and the strange girl from support taking the spots. Though neither got last place, ironically it was Aoyama who got 42nd. But if you didn't get the chance, we have something fun for you later. Now to announce the next event, called out Midnight. The screen behind her showed cavalry battle. Really? Asked Katsuki. Looks like it's a team event, said Izuku. Katsuki nodded. All right, let me explain the rules, said Midnight. She explained the rules was that it would be the standard game with the teams of 2 to 4 people with up to 3 horses and 1 rider. And each other person would be assigned points. Each team would have a headband that the other teams would try to steal in order to get more points. Though this part was interrupted by Ashido and Hagakure, guessing the points would be assigned by their places in the race. Let continue explain, said Midnight. But yes. The person who got 42nd will be worth 5 points, and each spot would go up in intervals of 5. With first place being worth 10 million points. What? Asked Izuku. Everyone started to look at Izuku with hungry looks in their eyes. He began to sweat. This will be the heat chance to those at the bottom can climb to the top, said Midnight. Izuku was seriously considering turning into his animal form and hiding. Deku, said Katsuki grabbing his shoulder, don't turn into your animal form and hide. Izuku's sweat dropped when she said that. The next round wasn't going to be an easy event at all. But thankfully he already had a team set up, though they would have to remind that they are in fact a team first. Next time, Izuku, Katsuki, Achiko and Tsuyu of course team up for the cavalry battle. And Katsuki isn't going to take it laying down. They will take as many headbands as they can. Will it work? Also, what will happen when someone from Class 1B copies Izuku's quirk? Find out next time. Chapter 12. The second event. Izuku was freaking out. He had way too many points. No one was going to want to team up with him because his points were too high. That was when Katsuki whacked him in the head. Kaken, cried Izuku. Are you done being an idiot? Asked Katsuki. What? Asked Izuku. I mean seriously, you really think I'm just going to abandon you for the second round? Asked Katsuki. Kaken, cried Izuku as tears fell out of his eyes. That was when he felt a tap on her shoulder and it was Achiko with Tsuyu. Come on, we're a team, said Achiko. She's right. Guys, cried Izuku as more tears came out. Deku, calm down. If you continue to cry you'll pass out from dehydration again, said Katsuki. Wait, has that happened before? Asked Achiko. I'm not surprised. Izuku blushed in embarrassment from that. Okay, so what's the plan? Asked Tsuyu. Oh, what if we have Deku in his mascot form be the rider? Said Achiko. He'll be really small so it will be harder to steal the headband. I don't think that's a good idea, said Izuku. Why? Asked Achiko. For one thing, that defeats the purpose of having a full team, said Katsuki. He's too small of all us to carry him. Plus it would leave me at a disadvantage as I wouldn't be able to use any of your quirks, pointed out Izuku. Oh, that does make sense, said Achiko. Let me guess, Deku, you have an idea, said Katsuki. Izuku explained his idea, which was that him and Achiko would take the back, while Tsuyu would take the front. And whenever they would need to make a quick escape they would be able to using a combination, especially a combined super long jump. As he was explaining this, the girl from support showed up. I've been looking all over you, said the girl. Kid who got first place. Team up with me. Sorry, but I already have a full team, sighed Izuku. What? Yelled the girl. Sorry, said Izuku. Fine then. I'll make a better team than this one. She said, going to find someone else to team up with. Also, there's something else we have to talk about, said Katsuki. What? Asked Izuku. We can't go on the defensive, he said. Wait, are thinking of stealing them too? Asked Achiko. If they want ours they have to really fight for it, said Katsuki with a smirk. I think I'll be able to steal them easily. All right then, said Katsuki with a smirk. You do it too, Deku. Izuku nodded. And with that they got their headband and waited for the event to begin. As the event was starting everyone seemed to eye them. All right, called out Midnight, let's begin. And of course almost every single team made a beeline for them. You think we're going to take everything lying down? You got another thing coming, yelled Katsuki. She then unleashed 2 explosions. This made almost every team with members of Class 1A sweat drop. You know, maybe we should realize that this would be the case, said Ashido with a sweat drop as she told her team consisted of Kirishima as the rider, Tokoyami as the front horse, and the support girl as the other back horse. Who cares? We have my babies, yelled the girl. Hatsum, Bakugo's kind of crazy, said Ashido. I don't think she's going to listen, sighed Tokoyami. Come on, let's go that headband, yelled the girl named Hatsum. Team Bakugo, as they were known, started to dodge the various attempt to get their headband. However, a couple of them lost their headband thanks to Tsuyu's tongue. Oh come on, yelled Hagakure, who got her headband stolen. Sorry, said Izuku. Don't apologize, scolded Katsuki. That was when suddenly they began to sink into the ground. Must be someone from 1B, said Tsuyu. All right, Deku. Round face. It's time, said Katsuki. Both of them did a combined light and load, and all of them hung on tight as Katsuki blasted them out. They were airborne for a bit, but then they landed. Okay, let's go find more headbands to take, yelled Katsuki. That was when the 3 of them were having a hard time with their shoes. What? Said Achiko. They looked down and saw that they were stuck to the ground thanks to Mineta's hairball. Great, muttered Katsuki. But where is he? Asked Izuku. They saw Shoji with his tentacles hiding something on his back. Then they saw him peek from the crack in the tentacles and giggle. There he is, muttered Tsuyu. Ditch your shoes. We're going after a grapist, growled Katsuki. Izuku wisely kept quiet. Once they managed to get their shoes off, they all ran towards Team Mineta. You grapehead BSTD, yelled Katsuki as the team ran towards them. Zero, yelled Mineta. Okay, sighed Zero, who was also in there. Zero's in there? Asked Izuku. Is that even allowed? Asked Achiko. I'm allowing it, said Midnight. This made many teams sweat drop. Zero shot taped at them, however with Katsuki's reflexes she caught and blew it up. Oh, said Mineta. They're headed right for us, yelled Zero. Really should run away, said Shoji with a sweat. You think, yelled Mineta. I realized something that might calm them down, yelled Zero. What? Asked Mineta. Well, considering you got your headband stolen, said Zero with a sweat drop. What? Cried Mineta. It was true. Sometime earlier someone had taken their headband. Mineta knew there was only one thing that can be done to make sure that they harm him. Wait, I lost my headband. Someone must have taken it, cried Mineta. Please don't hurt me. Shoji put down his tentacles to show that it was indeed true. Neither he nor Zero had a headband. Katsuki looked at them. You got lucky, she muttered. Mineta breathed a sigh of relief. But if you steal any more headbands, said Katsuki with a sadistic grin, we're coming for you. Mineta began to sweat. Also, I don't know how those balls work, but if they don't get unstuck you owe round face new shoes, said Katsuki. Really, Kaken? Muttered Achiko, glaring at the hothead girl. Don't look at me, muttered Katsuki. Don't worry, they should be not sticky soon. I swear, said Mineta. Good, muttered Katsuki. Let's make a big one. The rest of the team nodded and they jumped away looking for someone else to go after. When they landed, however, they found themselves surrounded by members of Class 1B. The blonde boy tries to steal Katsuki's headband. However, she was ready for this and blew him up before he could do it. Oh, you're not as dumb as I thought, he said. His name was Nito Minoma. You know, that speech rather interesting, he said. I was calling out someone else from our class, muttered Katsuki. It was still arrogant of you, said Minoma. What are you going to try to steal my headband, or do you just want attention for your class? Asked Katsuki. I guess you could say it was a mixture of both, said Minoma. I realize that during the race, if we make it seem like we're much weaker, we can really shine in the later events. I even convinced my class, well, not everyone, but most. Katsuki glared at him harshly. Let's steal his handbands, said Katsuki. Of course you want to do that, said Tsuyu. They ran towards him, however Minoma smirked and suddenly let loose an explosion at them. Katsuki glared at him as the managed to jump back from him. So, a copy Quirk, said Katsuki. Ding, 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 mocked Monoma. He had his circle around them, with them glaring at Monoma. I was actually going to leave you alone, said Monoma. Honestly, I didn't want to go after the 10 millions points. But I had heard rumors about your class having someone who could permanently copy quirks. Izuku started to sweat. I don't know what will happen if I copy such a quirk, but I'm willingly to find out, said Monoma. Wait, you don't want to copy my quirk, yelled Izuku. However, the team maneuvered enough for Monoma to touch Izuku's face. Monoma smirked as he activated Izuku's quirk. However, he was quickly engulfed by yellow smoke, and when it cleared, of course, he was an animal similar to Izuku's animal form, but different. Instead of rabbit ears, he had fox ears, and instead of dog's tail, he had a cat's tail. Also, instead of having a gem that shifted colors, on his forehead was a very dull gray stone. And of course, he was still blonde. He also almost fell off his team, who were shocked by what just happened. But he managed to climb back onto them. What did you do to me? He yelled, looking at himself. Well, that's my quirk, said Izuku, blushing. Wait, you're the stuffed toy I heard about, said Monoma. Izuku sighed. You know he's not really stuffed toy, said Katsuki. I know that, yelled Monoma. After all, he could still feeling his various body parts and organs and clearly wasn't filled with stuffing. What did you do to me? Well, my quirk turns me into a magical girl mascot, said Izuku, blushing. What? Said Monoma. It's true, my quirk let me bond with people, and it kind of turns them into magical girls, said Izuku. It's not kind of, and whoever I bond with, well, I get a permanent copy of their quirk, explained Izuku. Monoma turned off the quirk and turned back human. Where did my clothes go? He yelled out, realizing he was naked during that time, he an animal. Thankfully, they did return when he turned back. I don't know, said Izuku. My quirk is really weird. Monoma just looked at them very confused. Wait a second, said Monoma. Are you telling me you're all magical girls? Well, not Deku, he's our mascot, said Achiko, trying not to laugh. Shouldn't we do something? Said one of Monoma's teammate. However, that was when Tsuyu stole all of Monoma's headbands. Now, yelled Katsuki. They once again made a jump. Monoma was just baffled by everything that just happened, that he couldn't process it. Meanwhile, Team Bakugo finally landed. We haven't seen Todoroki's team yet, said Izuku. I have been looking for you, however, said a voice. They turned and saw Team Todoroki, which did have Todoroki as the rider, but the horses were Ida, Yaoyorozu, and Kaminari. Really, leg day? Asked Katsuki. I assumed that you three would team up with Midoriya, said Ida. Still, with Icy Hot, I would be okay with anyone else, muttered Katsuki. Ida didn't answer back. Ida didn't want to admit that it was also because he, like Midoriya, was doing much better in the competition for him and he wanted to defeat him. But he didn't want to say that out loud due to the fact that, well, he knew about the harsh past that Izuku had and it might be seen as a betrayal. Look, Icy Hot BSRD, muttered Katsuki. I've already told you. Deku isn't the one you should consider a rival. But right now you two are on the same team, so it doesn't really matter, said Todoroki. Katsuki glared at him. That was when Todoroki created a large wall of ice, making sure that none of could get out and those outside could get in, including freezing many to the ground. Outside the ice wall, however, Team Kirishima was unscathed. Oh, come on, yelled Hatsum. Hey, maybe we can get all their headbands, said Ishido. All right, sounds like a plan, said Kirishima. Tokoyami readied his quirk to steal them. Back on the other side of the wall. I have an idea, said Izuku. He told his team the idea, which was to move towards in the direction of Todoroki's left, exploiting the fact that he refused to use his fire for some reason. As there was only 1 minute left, there wasn't that bad. Wait a second, why are we just standing here? Asked Tsuyu, realizing something. What? Asked Izuku. It's a good plan, but Katsuki face-palmed. What? Asked Todoroki. Make the FING jump, you idiots, yelled Katsuki. They once again went airborne. However, Todoroki created a wall of ice block their path. F dash, yelled Katsuki. She prevent the crash using an explosion. They landed, but all four of them were breathing heavily. You really didn't think I would be prepared for that? Asked Todoroki. Katsuki glared at him. Todoroki. Ida, I have an idea. But afterwards my quirk will be completely useless. The team was quiet. Be sure to grab it, Todoroki, yelled Ida. That was when there was suddenly a burst of speed. Recipro burst, yelled Ida as his speed was so fast none of them knew what just happened. What the F dash, yelled Katsuki. Oh no, said Izuku, now you've done it. You wanna die, fuckers? I will make sure that you die, yelled Katsuki as fire surrounded her. Ida, I think you made a huge mistake, said Kaminari. I believe so, said Ida, starting to sweat. Kaken, please clam down, cried Izuku. No, yelled Katsuki, all but Ponytail are going to die. Because you still might need her. What? Yelled Yaoyorozu. Other three looked at each other and all grabbed Katsuki. Let me go. They must die, yelled Katsuki. Not until you calm down, Kaken, cried Izuku. We already have enough points. We don't need the 10 million points. Sitsi. Fine, I won't kill Leg Day. But Icy Hot and Pikachu need to die, yelled Katsuki. Just clam down, cried Izuku. Please, Kaken, cried Ochako. No. Icy Hot needs to stop holding back. And Pikachu, said Katsuki, who gave him a very harsh glare. You know what you did. What? Said Kaminari, confused. He didn't know what he did. Kaken, you know he doesn't know what he did, said Izuku. Kaminari began to panic. What did I do? Said Kaminari. He had been leering at Inko. But of course he currently didn't know that she was Izuku's mother. Seriously, what did I do? Asked Kaminari. He looked at Todoroki and Yaoyorozu, who both looked confused. Ida, on the other hand, just adjusted his glasses. Unlike Kaminari, he knew what he did. However, Kaminari noticed the way Ida was acting. What did I do? He cried. However, during this time, Present Mike started counting down from 10. This only made Katsuki angrier. Threw his arm held on R tightly as possible. Time's up, yelled Present Mike. Katsuki screamed. All right. In first place we have Team Todoroki, who had the 10 million headband, yelled Present Mike. Todoroki just looked at Team Bakugo, who now tackled Katsuki to the ground now that it was over. In second place we have Team Bakugo, who while they lost the 10 million point headband still gather enough to pass on, said Present Mike. Like hell we did, yelled Katsuki. In third place, a come-from-behind victory for Team Shinso, yelled Present Mike, surprised. Indeed, the lavender-haired boy who was named Hitoshi Shinso had managed to steal third place from Team Tetsutetsu at the last second. Fourth place it's Team Kirishima, called Present Mike, who took advantage of the frozen people. Why didn't you give the point total? Said Aizawa. I have my reasons, said Present Mike. In the faculty box, Inko had cried so much that the box had like an inch of tears. Also, she had just passed pout. We have to get recovery, girl, yelled All Might. The sports drink didn't work, said one of the other teachers. But think she just cried out all she drank, said 13. Once Katsuki had calmed down, it was announced they would take a break for lunch. No fair, Ida. You had to hide that special move from us, said Ochako. It wasn't a matter of hiding it, said Ida. Where are Midoriya and Bakugo? Todoroki wanted to talk to Izuku, and Katsuki followed them to keep an eye on them. In a hallway, Todoroki and Izuku looked at each other. Izuku was nervous, and little does he know he was going to understand why Todoroki declared war on him, and it was going to be something he didn't expect at all. Next time, Todoroki tells Izuku of his past. But what's more, Katsuki figures out why Todoroki doesn't like Izuku's quirk. Also, who will face off against each other in the first round of the third event. Find out next time. Chapter 13, Break Between Games. Izuku looked at his classmate cursorily. He still didn't know why Todoroki wanted to talk. He also knew Katsuki was listening in just in case Todoroki tried something. What did you want to talk about? Said Izuku. I don't understand your quirk, said Todoroki. What? Asked Izuku. I mean, I explained most of it on the way to USJ. Todoroki blushed a little. I might have been taking a nap during the bus ride, said Todoroki. Izuku stared at Todoroki, unsure how to respond. You know my father is the number 2 hero, right? Asked Todoroki. Endeavor, said Izuku, nodding. Tell me, do you know about quirk marriages? Asked Todoroki. Izuku's eyes widened. Todoroki began to explain what quirk marriages were. When 2 people got married to produce children with strong quirks. They were more common in the early days of quirks, and the practice mostly fell out of favor. However, Endeavor had done it. He paid my mother's family to marry her for my quirk, said Todoroki. Down the hall, Katsuki was gritting her teeth, figuring out why Todoroki was telling Izuku. All my memories of my mother are of her crying, said Todoroki. However, she despised my right half and then she poured boiling water on my face. Izuku was staring in horror. I get it now, muttered Katsuki. Todoroki turned to Katsuki. You were listening in? Asked Todoroki. Of course I was, said Katsuki. Or did you forget what I said at the start of the year? Todoroki glared at her. Kaken? Asked Izuku. He comparing your quirk to what happened to his mom, said Katsuki. What? Asked Izuku. Todoroki said nothing. It's not like that all, said Izuku. Todoroki still said nothing. My quirk has a side effect that if I bond with a male, said Izuku. How do you know that? Asked Todoroki. Izuku said nothing and just looked at Katsuki. None of your business, muttered Katsuki. Todoroki glared at her. Look, if there wasn't a side effect, then Izuku would have bonded with Ito weeks ago, said Katsuki. Todoroki was surprised at this, not as what she said, but rather she used their names. You know, you're probably not going to listen anymore, so we're leaving, muttered Katsuki. Wait, said Izuku. It's because of that you won't use your fire, right? Todoroki still refused to answer, but the look in face said it all. Izuku nodded, and when Katsuki grabbed his arm and they both left the dual-colored boy. Once Todoroki was out of earshot, Izuku said this. I think we should tell him, said Izuku. Katsuki looked at Izuku and sighed. Fine, but we're going to get evidence as well, said Katsuki. Considering this, I doubt he'll take it at face value. Izuku nodded. That was when Izuku's phone rang. He saw it was from Recovery Girl. A call from Recovery Girl? Asked Izuku. He had her phone number in case of emergencies. Hello, he answered. Hello, Midoriya. I need you to come to my temporary office, said Recovery Girl. It has nothing to do with your health, don't worry. But what happened? Asked Izuku. It's your mother, said Recovery Girl. Izuku paled. She cried too much and she passed out from dehydration, said Recovery Girl. Oh, that, said Izuku, relaxing quite a bit. She had mentioned it wasn't the first time, sighed Recovery Girl. No, it wasn't, said Izuku. I'll be there soon. He hung up the phone. What's wrong? Asked Katsuki. Oh, just that mom cried too much, said Izuku. Not again, sighed Katsuki. They got to the temporary office. I'm sorry, it's just that I'm so proud of you, cried Inko. Mom, please don't cry, cried Izuku. I know, sighed Inko. I need to drink a lot. You should make sure that she does drink before the break is over, said Recovery Girl. I will, said Izuku. I guess we'll be having lunch together, said Katsuki. Inko nodded. That was when Izuku activated the telepathy to tell Ochako and Tsuyu that they wouldn't be having lunch together. Hey, you didn't get lunch for us? Thought Izuku. No, we didn't. Why? Asked Ochako. Mom cried too much and passed out, explained Izuku. Really? Asked Tsuyu. I bet you neighbors complain about water damage, joked Ochako. About that, mentally sighed Inko. Really? Asked Ochako. We'll see you later, thought Izuku. Katsuki, there's something we have to do, explained Ochako. What? Asked Katsuki. Apparently there's a cheerleader competition, started Tsuyu. Wait, cheerleader coemption? Asked Inko. There's nothing like that planned, Are you sure? Asked Ochako. I did help plan everything out. Pointed out Inko. Who told you that? Said Katsuki, getting a bad feeling. Yaoyorozu. Explained Ochako. And where did she hear that from? Asked Katsuki. Hold on a second. Said Ochako. In the cafeteria the other girls had gathered so Yaoyorozu could tell them about the so-called competition. Who told you that there was a cheerleader competition? Asked Tsuyu. Kaminari and Mineta, and... said Yaoyorozu. The other girls stared at her. You bought that? Asked Jiro, face-palming. Yaoyorozu blushed. It was Mineta and Kaminari. Mentally sighed Tsuyu. Of FING course. Muttered. Katsuki. I'm sorry. Cried Yaoyorozu. Hey. It's a good thing Deku and Kakin had to meet with a staff member. Said Ochako, or we would have been tricked. Wait, why did they have to meet with a staff member? Asked Mina. It's a long story. Said Tsuyu. Can you make the cheerleader costume for me at least? Asked Hagakure. Why? Asked Yaoyorozu with a sweat drop. I think they're cute. Said Hagakure, rubbing the back of her neck nervously. Also, how do you think the two will react that the only girl they got is Hagakure? Said Jiro with a smirk. Yaoyorozu blinked and then smirked. Not too long later, the break was over and the students returned to the stadium. Kaminari and Mineta saw that most of the girls weren't wearing the cheerleader uniform. No, yelled Mineta. How did you see through it? Asked Kaminari. Me and Deku had to meet with someone from the staff. She told us that there was no cheerleader coemption. Said Katsuki, cracking her knuckles. Katsuki, come down. Said Tsuyu, it didn't work. Mostly, you still got your cheerleader. Said Jiro. The two saw that it was Hagakure. Oh, come on, yelled Kaminari. At least we can see her curves. Said Mineta. What was that? Asked Katsuki. Nothing, yelled Mineta in fear. All right, called out Midnight. It's time to draw lots for our third event. All right. I've always watched it and now I'm finally going to be a part of it. Said Kirishima. Is it always a tournament? Said Mina. Yeah, last year's was fights with foam swords. Said Kirishima. Wait. Called out Ojiro, who was part of Time Shinso along with Aoyama and a small somewhat plump boy from Class 1B. I would like to withdraw. Everyone was surprised. What? This is your chance, Ojiro. Said Izuku. I know, but I don't even remember anything from the event. Said Ojiro, it wouldn't feel right if I remained. I want to drop out. Said Tai, the boy from 1B. Shota. You can't be serious, yelled Monoma. I'm sorry, but he's right. I can't remember anything from the match either. Said the boy named Shota, and passing without using your own skills, it feels like it should be against the rules. All this talk is naive and it's really turning me on. Said Midnight. Did she just say it turned her on? Thought all of the students. Mashiroa Ojiro and Nirangenki Shota have officially dropped out. Said Midnight. Now we have to figure out who gets in. Don't worry, Ojiro. I will avenge you. Said Aoyama to Ojiro. Once again they were on the same team. It better not be someone from Class 1A, muttered Monoma. I mean, they already have most of the spots. As only 4 teams ended with points, we will have the last team to lose their points move on, which is Team Tetsu, said Midnight. Monoma breathed a sigh of relief. It was decided that Tetsu, along with a girl with vines for hair named Ibra Shiozaki, would be the ones to pass on to the next round. All right, now it's time to draw lots. Midnight. The first match was Izuku and Shinso. The second match was Tsuyu and Todoroki. The third match was Ida and Hatsum. The fourth match was Kaminari and Ibra. The fifth match was Mina and Aoyama. The sixth match was Yaoyorozu and Tokoyami. The seventh match was Kirishima and Tetsu. And the final match was Katsuki and Ochako. All right, round face. You ready for a magical girl fight? Asked Katsuki. Ochako just giggled. Tsuyu was very nervous for tuple reasons while Todoroki was clearing at her. You're Izuku Midoriya? Right. Shinso said as he approached Izuku. Izuku was about to say something when Ojiro stopped him by grabbing his tail. Ojiro's tail, not Izuku's tail. Don't answer that. Said Ojiro. Shinso just smirked and walked away. What? Said Izuku. I have to explain about his quirk, said Ojiro. Izuku paled at that implication. All right. We have some recitational games that everyone can play if they wish to, said Midnight. Even those in the tournament can join in. And so the recreational games began. However, most of the competitors of the final event sat it out. Izuku spent that time talking to Ojiro about his opponent's quirk, while Tsuyu wondered what she could do as she knew she didn't stand a chance against Todoroki. However, the third events would be soon and no one was sure was going to happen. And all they could hope they would pull through. Next time, it's Izuku versus Shinso and Tsuyu versus Todoroki. Will Izuku be able to stop Shinso's quirk? Will Tsuyu figure out a way to beat the powerhouse of their class? Find out next time. Chapter 14. The first two matches. Each of the classes were given their own box to view the matches from. There were only 2 students missing from Class 1A's box as the matches were soon to be given. Those being Todoroki and Izuku. Should you be getting ready for your match, Tsu? Asked Ochiko. I don't know if there's much I can do against him, admitted Tsuyu. It's not that he's one of the strongest in class, is it? Asked Katsuki. No, said Tsuyu. Wait, you have the abilities of a frog, correct? Asked Ida, realizing it. What? Asked Ochiko. I don't do good with the cold, she explained to Ochiko. Oh, said Ochiko. The powers help with the drawback, said Katsuki. It might not be that bad. Really? Asked Tsuyu. Yeah, I don't get as nauseous, said Ochiko. And I don't get as dehydrated, said Katsuki. Wait, one of your drawbacks is that you get dehydrated, said Ochiko, trying not to smile. I have never passed out from dehydration, said Katsuki, trying not to smirk. What? Asked Ida. Auntie passed out from dehydration from crying too much. That why me and Deku weren't at lunch. Katsuki whispered to Ida. Is she all right? Asked Ida, become concerned. She's fine, it's not the first time it happened, said Katsuki. Ida's sweat dropped when Katsuki said that. But seriously, frog face. Just use your wand on him and hope for the best, said Katsuki. That doesn't help. Tsuyu with a sweat drop. Katsuki just shrugged. All right, now it's time for the first match in the final event of the sports festival, yelled Present Mike. The crowd cheered in excitement. First off, we have the multi-quirked cinnamon bun of Class 1A Izuku Midoriya against the dark horse of general studies Hitoshi Shinso, called out Present Mike. Izuku looked at Shinso nervously when Present Mike explained the rules. Defeat would occur with one of 3 things. The competitor ends up out of bounds, the competitor is unable to continue, or the competitor says uncle. Also, Cementos was acting as a secondary referee to make sure that no one uses lethal attacks, which was against the rules. All right, now that's out of the way. Let's get started, yelled Present Mike. Izuku activated Katsuki's quirk. You know, it's really pathetic that Monkey dropped out of the coemption, said Shinso with a smirk. He probably just lacked what it took to continue on. Don't you dare say that about, said Izuku. But he couldn't even finish his sentence as suddenly he froze. Shinso smirked. In the Class 1A box, Ojiro suddenly, no. I warned him. What's going on? Asked Ochiko. It's his quirk, said Ojiro. What the F is his quirk? Asked Katsuki. Flashback. In the room that was waiting room for competitors, Izuku was nervous after Ojiro was telling him what happened. So if I talk back to him, said Izuku. Ojiro nodded. He asked me something and after that I don't remember anything, said Ojiro. Is there any way to get out of it? Asked Izuku. At the end of the cavalry battle, I bumped into someone, explained Ojiro. That shock must have been the thing to snap me out of it. Izuku sighed. End of flashback. On the battlefield, Izuku still stood there in a trance. Now be a good little hero and walk out of bounds, said Shinso. Izuku turned around and walked slowly towards the boundary. It's like my head is filled with static, thought Izuku. I can't move. I should have kept my mouth shut. I'm sorry, everyone. In the faculty box. Izuku, no, cried Inko as tears streamed down her eyes. In Class 1A's box. What the F, Deku? yelled Katsuki. Deku, said Achiko. Please don't lose. That was when their gems all began to glow brightly. What's going on? Asked Shiro. In the faculty box they also saw the glow. On the battlefield, Izuku suddenly heard all of their voices and he stopped as his eyes widened. Shinso was confused when he stopped. What? He said. That was when Izuku was engulfed by his trademark puff of smoke and turned into his animal form. What? Asked Shinso again, even more confused. Izuku, who thankfully was still inbound, turned around. Wait, you're the stuffed toy? Asked Shinso, surprised. Izuku turned back human and nodded, figuring that would be a good way to respond without vocalizing it. Shinso just stared at Izuku, still extremely confused. How did you even get into the hero course? He asked in a combination of bafflement and trying to get Izuku to fall for it again. Izuku didn't answer, instead ran towards him and once again activated Katsuki quirk. He let loose a blast. I can't even tell what your quirk is, but I bet you didn't have to go through people telling you that you can't be a hero, that you're better suited to be a villain, said Shinso as he got up. Izuku knew he had to switch to plan B. He once again ran toward Shinso. I don't know how your quirk works, but I'm sure everyone's always told you could be a hero, yelled Shinso. He grabbed Izuku and punched him. However, Izuku just grabbed him right back. That was when suddenly Shinso felt himself floating as Izuku had switched to Achiko's quirk. Izuku proceeded to throw him to the extent he was out of bounds. Hitoshi Shinso is out of bounds. Izuku Midoriya is the winner, called out Midnight. Release, called out Izuku, putting Shinso back on the ground. He decided to switch to his animal form, knowing that would be the best way to approach him at the moment. You're wrong, only a few people ever said I could be a hero, said Izuku. Shinso looked at him. Is that your default form? Asked Shinso. It is, said Izuku. What? Said Shinso. My quirk is really weird, said Izuku. Because of that, growing up I was mocked for wanting to be a hero. My quirk allows me to make bonds with people, and well, I go into more details. But you'll see it later, and when I make a bond, one get a permanent copy of their quirk and I get more time as a human, but there are side effects. I can't make a bond with a male or something will happen to them. Also, growing up my best friend was often mocked and bullied. She claims it didn't get to her, but I knew it did. You think I'd believe that? Asked Shinso. Yeah, said Izuku. Izuku, that was when he got caught up in the brainwashing. But Shinso quickly let him go. I was just kidding, even I compared you to a stuffed toy, said Shinso. Yeah, said Izuku. Though the more I look at you, the more I think you look like a magical girl mascot, muttered Shinso. Izuku started laughing nervously. Wait, said Shinso, your quirk turns you into a magical girl mascot? Izuku nodded. Shinso just stared at Izuku, processing everything. A magical girl mascot was in the hero course. Midoriya. Shinso, please leave the battlefield and take your conversation elsewhere if you have to, muttered Aizawa. Izuku turned back human, who shrugged. It was clear that the conversation was over. Shinso headed towards the exit. Hey Shinso, called out a voice. He looked up and saw many of classmates. Good job, called out one of them. You really showed them, called out another one. Shinso, please leave, muttered Aizawa. Back in the class 1A box, Tsuyu sighed. Good luck, said Achiko nervously. Yeah, hopefully he won't kick your butt too badly, said Katsuki. Seriously Katsuki, said Tsuyu. Look, Icy Hot hates Deku's quirk, so be really careful, all right? Said Katsuki quietly. Tsuyu's eyes widened when he said that. Only her, Ida, Achiko and Jiro, due to her quirk, heard what she said. Tsuyu nodded as she left. A few minutes later, Izuku finally arrived. Ojiro gave Izuku a high five, then headed to where his friends were sitting. Hey, said Izuku. Good job, said Achiko. Izuku nodded. By the way, do you know why our gems were glowing? Asked Katsuki. Oh, that happened, said Izuku. I guess it's a new connection, because I was able to snap out of it when I heard your voices, including Tsu and Mom's. Really? Said Achiko. DMN magical girl logic. muttered Katsuki as Izuku turned to Animal and jumped to Katsuki's shoulder. Is it true what Bakugo said, that Todoroki doesn't like your quirk? Asked Ida. He does seem to hate it, but it's based on a misunderstanding, said Izuku. Do you plan to clear it up? Asked Ida. After the sports festival, said Izuku. Do you know why? Asked Ochako. Said Izuku, I can't say. The reason is really effed up. So don't ask about it, muttered Katsuki. Ochako and Ida looked at each other concerned. However, soon enough the match announcement had begun. First off, we have the Ice Prince of Class 1A Shoto Todoroki against the Fantastic Frog Girl, also of Class 1A Tsu Azui, called out present. Tsuyu looked at Todoroki. She was still nervous but knew that Katsuki's plan of transforming and using her wand might be the best tactic. And begin, called out Midnight. In less than a second, Tsuyu grabbed her necklace and transformed. Todoroki glared harshly at her and sent a wave of ice at her. For those wondering, that magical transformation has nothing to do with her quirk, said Present Mike. One of her classmates, who I'm not at liberty to say, has a quirk that lets him form bonds with people. The bond is symbiotic. What they get is a special set of armor that enhances their quirks and a special weapon that has a special enhanced aspect of their quirk, explained Aizawa. And yes, it does take the form of magical girl powers if you haven't noticed, explained Present Mike. I was hoping to avoid that, muttered Aizawa. In the Class 1C box, Shinso blinked. I knew he couldn't have been joking, but, seeing it, muttered Shinso with eye twitching. In the Class 1B box, Monoma was trying not to freak out. He stuck his over the wall to Class 1A's. I thought you were trying to mess with me, he yelled. The rest of the class stared at him. Why would I mess with you about my quirk? Asked Izuku. That was when suddenly Monoma slumped over. Sorry about him, said a girl from the class with red hair put into a side ponytail. Her name was Itsuka Kendo. On the bright side, you won't be known as the stuffed animal anymore but the magical girl Mascot, said Sada. I know, sighed Izuku. Back on the battlefield, Tsuyu jumped out of the way. During the 2 weeks, she learned more about the poisonous mucus she created from the wand. She could control its potency and effects. It was actually sending samples to Recovery Girl to examine it. But still, if she managed to hit Todoroki with it, he would be paralyzed and then she would win. But she knew it was a big if. But still she had to try. She shot the mucus from her wand. However, Shoto just sent out a huge glacier engulfing her, most of the battlefield and a good chunk of the stadium. Just about everyone in the stadium gaped as what happened. Thankfully the cold wasn't causing Tsuyu that many problems. She was still feeling a bit lethargic, but it wasn't as bad. Azui, can you move? Asked Midnight. No, I can't, muttered Tsuyu. Azui is unable to move. Todoroki wins the match, called out Midnight. Todoroki moved to melt the ice. He looked at Tsuyu, who looked at him back. Do you regret bonding with Midoriya? He asked her as he melted the ice. Why would I regret it? Asked Tsuyu. Todoroki gritted his teeth. In Class 1A's box, Izuku stood there, unsure how to respond to the fight. After all, what happened was crazy, but also he knew why Todoroki didn't like his quirk. He wasn't sure how the next fight was going to go, but he had some ideas how he was going to handle it. However, there were still 6 matches before his fight with Todoroki, including the match between Katsuki and Ochako. And of course, considering what Katsuki said about how she would be using her transformation during the fight, it would prove to an interesting. Next time, it's Katsuki versus Ochako. Of course, it's a magical girl match. Which one of them will come out on top? Will Ochiko's gravity control overcome Katsuki's explosions, or will Katsuki reign supreme? Find out next time. Chapter 15. Magical Girl Fight. The matches after Tsuyu's were very different, Thankfully, the third match, which was between Ida and Hatsum, was interesting. It was one-sided and Ida won. But it wasn't a fight. The thing was that she tricked him by making him think she was making it even and giving him some support gear to use in their match. It turned out she used it as an adverting pitch for her gear, and for 10 minutes she did nothing but advertise until giving up when she ran out of things to show off, much to Ida's anger. Kaminari's fight was, well, pretty one-sided. He ended up going over his limit, becoming an idiot with Shiozaki defeating him. After the match, Monoma once again peeked over. "That was pathetic and you think your class is better," he bragged. Booty once again Kendo knocked him out and apologized. Afterwards was the match between Ishido and Aoyama. Ishido won, she distracted by melting the belt he uses to use his quirk. Also his pants fell off as a result. In the next match it was Yaoyorozu versus Tokoyami. Tokoyami managed to push out Yaoyorozu out of bounds while she tried to block him. The match between Kirishima and Tetsu was interesting. The two were too similar. So similar that it ended up in a draw with a double knockout. It was decided that they would be settled with an arm wrestling match after Katsuki and Achiko's fight. And of course that was the match that was next. In Class 1A's box, Izuku wasn't sure what to do. "You're torn," said Ida. "Of course I am," said Izuku. "Just cheer for both of them," said Hagakure. "I don't know if I can do that," said Izuku blushing. "Just be happy for whoever wins." "I know," sighed Izuku. And soon enough the two competitors got on the battlefield. We have the explosive bombshell of Class 1A Katsuki Bakugo vs the adorable astronaut and my personal favorite Achiko Uraraka, yelled Present Mike. Much of the arena sweat dropped at the blatant sue of favoritism. Round face. "Remember, this isn't just about winning," said Katsuki. Achiko didn't say anything. "But I'm still going to kick your butt," yelled Katsuki. "Seriously?" asked Achiko with a sweat drop. "And begin," yelled Present Mike. Both of them grabbed their necklaces and transformed. "Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that both of them are magical girls as well," called out Present Mike. "So this is a battle between magical girls." Aizawa just sighed. Not really because of the fight but because of the whole having a magical girl mascot as a student still weirded him out. Back on the battlefield, Katsuki immediately summoned her wand and aimed an attack at Achiko. She dodged by flying away, thankfully remaining in bounds. "That's not going to work, round face," said Katsuki. That was when she launched herself into the air with explosions coming from her feet. Achiko could barely dodge as Katsuki aimed an explosion at her. Achiko summoned her own wand while recovering from the explosion. "Sheet!" yelled Katsuki as she was forced down to the ground thanks to the heavier gravity. Katsuki managed to get up, but her body was shaking. After all, the gravity was much stronger. She aimed many explosions at Achiko, trying to get her to let her go. Achiko dodged as best as she could. During it, Katsuki smirked. "Oh, I get it," said Katsuki with a smirk. "You can't fly away while you're holding me down." "What makes you think that?" asked Achiko. "You would have done it already," said Katsuki with a smirk. "You have to get better with your wand." Achiko just looked at her opponent, not saying anything. They continued to fight, with Katsuki fighting against the higher than normal gravity and Achiko keep dodging any of her explosions. Achiko took a breath as she finally let Katsuki go. "Are you finally reaching your limit?" asked Katsuki in a tone that somehow both mocking and curious. After all, Katsuki did have limits with her wand too. "No, there's a reason why I wasn't flying," said Achiko. "Oh really, what?" she asked. That was when a petal hit her shoulder. She looked up and saw that she was using her power to make a bunch of rocks float into the air. Katsuki realized where the rocks came from, all of the debris caused by her explosions. "Sheet!" yelled Katsuki. "Sorry, Kaken," said Achiko. She then used her wand to once again increase the gravity for the rocks. She also flew out of the way during the meteor shower. Katsuki knew that she had to unleash one of her bigger explosions. Not the size of the one that obliterated the flood zone, but close. However, the force of the explosion combined with her flying didn't just obliterate the rocks but also knocked Achiko out of bounds. "Oh seriously," said Achiko. Noticed she the boundary? "Achiko Uraraka is out of bounds. Katsuki Bakugo is the winner," called out Midnight. In the stand, Izuku sighed. "You were still torn, weren't you?" asked Tsu. "Yeah," said Izuku. "Midoriya, should you be getting ready for your match?" asked Ida. "Oh right," said Izuku. He turned human and left the box. Back on the battlefield, Achiko landed, de-transformed, and sighed. Remember, part of the point of the tournament is to get noticed, said Katsuki. I'm sure you got some heroes' attention. If not, there's always next year. Achiko pouted a little. All right, we're going to take a break so that we can settle Kirishima and Tetsu match, called out Midnight. Achiko headed to the waiting room to take a break after the match. That was when Izuku came in. Oh hey, didn't know you were here, said Izuku. Sorry, said Achiko. It's fine, said Izuku. That was an amazing move, by the way. Yeah, said Achiko, but I just had to be facing off against Kaken. She's so strong. Yeah, said Izuku. Achiko looked at Izuku. I don't mean it that way, said Izuku. She's basically your big sister Deku. I know you two are that close, said Achiko. Izuku laughed and then sighed. I'm really worried about my fight though, sighed Izuku. Todoroki is really strong, and he doesn't like my quirk, so I'm sure he'll go all out. I'm sure you'll fine, said Achiko. You do have everyone's quirks with you? Though I won't use Tsu's, said Izuku. Yeah, probably not a good idea to use that, said Achiko. Yeah, laughed Izuku. They heard the crowd going wild outside. It sounds like it's almost over, sighed Izuku. Sorry you weren't able to get ready, said Achiko. That's fine. I think you gave me some ideas with your fight, honestly, said Izuku. Achiko nodded, knowing what he meant. Izuku left the waiting room and headed to the battlefield. However, on the way he stopped in his tracks, as he saw a pro hero with red hair and his face covered in flames, including flaming facial hair. It was Endeavor, Todoroki's father. Oh, you're the strange stuffed animal boy I heard about, the one with the permanent copy quirk, said Endeavor. Yeah, said Izuku nervously. Izuku mentally sighed in relief that Endeavor didn't know his true quirk for the moment. You know my son will defeat you, said Endeavor, and when he's done with you in this tournament he will go on to beat All Might, once he gets over his rebellious phase. Endeavor began to leave. Izuku glared at him. You know, said Izuku, he's his own person? What? Asked Endeavor. He's not someone you can just live through, said Izuku. There's a reason why he's rebelling against you, and you would realize that. Endeavor glared at Izuku. And of course Izuku immediately started to sweat. And he activated the telepathy. I need help. I'm in a situation, thought Izuku. What's wrong? Asked Inko, becoming. I ran into Endeavor and I might have called him out about some stuff I learned from Todoroki. What? Asked Inko. You should run, said Achiko. I don't think you can stand up against. Yeah, you'd probably die. Setsu. Don't listen to them, blast his effing face off, added Katsuki. Kaken, mentally cried Izuku. Endeavor looked at Izuku, who was just standing there. He glared at Izuku and left thinking that Izuku was having a mental breakdown for saying those things to him. And he didn't need a student becoming injured with burns right before facing off against his son. It would look suckeries. Izuku breathed a sigh of relief when he left. What happened? Asked Achiko. I'm pretty sure he left because I was just standing there panicking, explained Izuku. I see, said Inko. By the way, you might need to explain something about what you meant about Todoroki. I have my match, mentally yelled Izuku. Izuku turned off the telepathy and headed to the match. In the flatly box, Inko was concerned. Is everything all right? Asked All Might. It's just something Izuku said about Endeavor, said Inko. He mentioned he learned something about his son. All Might's eyes winded when she said that. What is it? Asked Inko. I ran into Endeavor earlier, said All Might. He said something that deeply concerned me, about how he created his son to one day defeat me. What? Asked Inko. All Might nodded. You don't think something is going on with them? Asked Inko. I have a bad feeling about it, sighed All Might. The arm wrestling match soon ended with Kirishima coming up on top. However, what was next was far more important. After all, Izuku had a plan for the match, and it wasn't really about winning. However, what he and Todoroki didn't know was that the match they were about to have would change everything, especially for Todoroki. Next time, it's the match between Izuku and Todoroki. Izuku decided to not only give it his all but also try to get Todoroki to use his fire. Will it work? Or will something happen that will change everything? Find out next time. The next chapter is a big one. So yeah.